I was reborn as a sword. Through hundreds of long years, the blade passed through countless owners' hands. The cold steel, thirsting for the blood of bygone eras. It was swung by knights, and I turned them into heroes remembered in history. But among all who ever grasped that hilt, one stood above the rest. I found my comrade. Together, the sword and its master roamed the world. The blade radiated a brilliant blue aura. They faced a gigantic monster, their combined strength shattering both white bone and iron. They climbed the frozen mountains, where the bitter wind tore the sky and challenged the white dragon. With a single earth-shattering stroke, the dragon's head was severed, its massive body collapsing down. While the knight stood there in the glory of victory, we traveled together across the world and achieved deeds none could match. Time flowed like a river. The comrade became king of a realm. A golden age born from the blade and me, along with the legend of the dragon slayer, grew on. The sword now lay as a revered relic in the palace, its golden hilt and the blue gem gleaming under a lone lamp. Please care for my descendants. That was my comrade's final wish when the sword was passed to his bloodline. However, the silence of the relic chamber was broken by rough, heavy pant. Why is it so noisy? The ancient soul within the sword awoke from its long sleep. Ugh, what a nuisance. Which rude, foolish creature is shaking my body? A sweaty, chubby hand gripped the hilt. The view revealed a grotesque sight. An excessively fat young man with blonde hair, his face twisted by greed and arrogance. From now on, the owner of this sword is me, the fat man shouted, spitting. Someone stepped forward, trembling. Your Highness, that is an item no one but the king may touch. Please return it to its place. The sword's consciousness recoiled in horror. What? The prince, this swine? It immediately swept through the status board that appeared in its mind. Adrien Leon Burke shouted, Shut up. There is nothing in this country I cannot touch. He clumsily brandished the legendary sword. The knights faltered. The sword lamented inwardly. Impossible. Seeing this name, is he truly my comrade's descendant? Yet such potential. Could this be the heir of a holy sword? Adrien Leon Burke, male, 16 years old. Talent, none. Personality, arrogant, pathologically obese, clumsy, lecherous, lazy, bullied, emotionally unstable. Adrien Leon Burke, sweating profusely, raised the sword high, eyes rolling in a delusion of power. With this, the king and the nobles will no longer be able to ignore me. The sword had seen enough and thought, what a ridiculous idiot, handling things so carelessly. Adrien screamed, his voice cracking. Oh, great dragon slayer, lend me your power. The sword's spirit roared in reply, a voice like thunder in the spirit realm. Are you insane? Why would I lend my power to someone like you? Adrien swung wildly, forcing the knights to try to restrain him. Your Highness, please put the sword down. You shouldn't be doing this in the palace. The words only made him angrier. Shut up. You dare order me around. Do you want to die? If I had Gruhan's power. Suddenly, Adrien tripped, his bulky body collapsing to the floor. The sword in his hand thus swung and aimed straight at him. Swoosh! Blood sprayed everywhere. The silver-haired knight saw this, his face full of worry. A maid behind him screamed in horror. Prince Adrien collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Send for the royal physician immediately. But as Adrien's vision blurred, the sword thought to itself, Oh, so the one stabbed is this bastard. My vision is clearing bit by bit. At this rate, I'll faint for the first time in my life as a sword. If Prince Adrien succeeds to the throne, the kingdom has no future. He inherited none of the royal talents, yet leads in arrogance. He lacks ability, but his greed is unsurpassed in the kingdom. He is a stupid, lazy, cruel pig. That is first Prince Adrien Leon Burke, a black cloud hanging over the kingdom's future. After such a prince was stabbed and hovered at the border of death before waking, a strange rumor began to spread. The maids whispered in the halls. About Prince Adrien Leon Burke. Hasn't he changed at all lately? A voice answered. Indeed, he no longer flings the dining table around like before, and he doesn't gather his gang of ruffians anymore, does he? They chuckled maliciously. Even the notorious first prince must feel embarrassed now. Isn't he just lying still out of fear? Wait a while, and he'll be back to his old self. However, Prince Adrien Leon Burke paid no mind to such rumors. The spirit inside was different. Thinking about how I killed my comrade's descendant and seized his body. Suddenly, the door burst open and a maid rushed in, bowing frantically. Your Highness, the king has arrived. Please quickly fix your attire to receive his majesty. The prince, now the sword spirit, still sat on the chair, thinking skeptically. No, he didn't even visit when I was about to die. So why this suddenness now? The maid replied. The knights are nearby. Please moderate your words. A tall figure entered the room. A gray-haired, bearded man with a stern face and a red cloak exuding authority. I heard you returned from death, but it seems that temper of yours is exactly the same. You may all withdraw. The king expects nothing anyway. He sat there confused, thinking, who is this? He recognized the man's identity. Is he the tutor of that fat man? The protagonist spoke calmly. My memories are chaotic. I feel like I could remember who you are, and yet I can't. The old man's eyes widened slightly in shock. Oh, don't tell me the maid made the grand announcement the king has arrived. Seeing this, the protagonist thought, the king? Then he must be that bastard's father. Oh, he's better than I thought. I assumed the passing years would dilute the lion's blood into dog blood. But seeing this king, perhaps that's not the case. The king said with disappointment, seeing you not even greet your father, it seems surviving death hasn't changed a man. The servant stepped forward anxiously. Your Majesty, I have just heard that the prince's memory is not normal. Another voice panicked. My gods, what a disaster. Why didn't the royal physician report this grave matter to your Majesty? Summon the physician immediately to examine the prince. Then the royal physician examined him. He reported, I find no abnormalities in the prince's body. However, it could be a temporary condition caused by psychological shock and amnesia. He looked at his son, who sat on the bed with a bored expression. The king thought skeptically, how convenient. If you say you remember nothing now, does that mean everything you've done so far never happened? When people make wrong choices, they may commit acts condemned by all. If afterward one recognizes this and never repeats the mistake, that can be called a learning process. But you have forgotten all of that, because it has all become as if it never happened. You have not taken a single step forward from past mistakes, and you will not be able to move forward in the future. The old knight whispered, Your Majesty, please remain calm. The protagonist sat dazed, thinking, he's really lecturing me. When the king left, he looked down at himself. Damn, I've stepped in shit. Never mind being treated like a prince. It seems I can't even be treated like a human. What the hell did that brat do after all? Suddenly, a beautiful woman wearing a crown rushed in, her eyes brimming with tears. She hugged him tightly. I've heard everything. You must be very confused. Your memory will return soon. No, that mundane past matters little if you don't remember it. Look how your beautiful face has wasted away. My poor son. He choked in her embrace, thinking, exactly where has it wasted away? The queen smiled warmly. Still, I am so happy you opened your eyes like this. You must never touch such dangerous objects again. If anything had happened and you didn't wake up, I don't even want to imagine it. Those words made him think. I'm sorry, but your son is dead. This is truly a burden. Night fell over the magnificent castle, bathing it in moonlight. The queen left waving. I will come visit you again. Rest well. As soon as the door slammed shut, his attitude changed immediately. My comrade begged me to care for his descendants, yet I killed one of them. It wasn't intentional, but I was the one who ended his life. Since things have come to this, what can I do? I must live well for the part of that dead man, too. Reborn as a sword. I spent my life cleaning up others' consequences. This is a fat, talentless body, but it's fine. I just need to rebuild my strength once more. Do you know how many children I've driven to wake? First, I need to train magic. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Green energy began to whirl around him. Mana flared up, enveloping his body in a green radiance. It intensified, lighting the dark room. But suddenly the energy flickered wildly. Adrien gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. Ugh! The blue flame vanished into nothingness. He looked stunned. The mana had been dissipated. This body couldn't absorb it. He refused to give up. Once more, he gathered his energy again. His face flushed red from the strain, veins bulging. Again, blue flames flared from his hands, but they were unstable. Energy burst outward. He collapsed to hands and knees, gasping. He stared at the floor, horrified and exhausted. What the hell is this? What kind of body is this, really? Adrien thought. If only I had my original body. With a physique like that, I could just force mana through and fix this easily. Suddenly, a rhythmic knock interrupted his internal fury. A maid in uniform entered, bowing respectfully but trembling slightly. Your Highness, forgive my abruptness. This is a tonic personally sent by the Queen. It tastes a bit bitter, but will be very good for your body. Please consider the Queen's intentions. The maid faltered, sweat beading on her brow, bracing herself for a violent reaction. Hopefully you won't throw the bowl like last time. She recalled vividly the prince's rage, shouting, I told you I won't take any medicine, but this time was different. Adrien's eyes widened as he stared at the bowl. That stuff, he recognized the energy emanating from the liquid. It contained mana. Without hesitation, he snatched the bowl, lifted it to his lips, and began to gulp it down voraciously. The maid watched in stunned silence, eyes wide in disbelief as the notoriously difficult prince drained the bowl in seconds. Satisfied? Now leave, she stammered as she prepared to leave. Yes, Your Highness. Left alone, he thought. Good, now once more. Fortunately, it worked. The accumulated mana was still far too little, so tiny it could vanish completely in a short day. However, unexpectedly he opened the door and stepped outside, pointing at the servant. Do you have more of that? A few days later, the room was filled with a mystical blue light, his body wrapped in swirling magical energy. Finally, at last I can create a soul mana core. I've done this countless times before. I could form something like a soul mana core, even with my eyes closed. Suddenly, a stabbing pain shot through his chest. It hurts. He clutched his heart, his face contorted in pain. It felt like I was burning inside, my chest about to explode. That's right, creating a soul mana core has always been this painful. I must not lose consciousness. If I pass out now, the mana will backlash against me. Sweat streamed down his face as he tried to regain his composure. Focus. Capture the mass of mana that's trying to run rampant. There's no need to rush. Follow the flow that runs along the heart to the right, very slowly. Let this new heart absorb it. A drop of pure blue mana fell into the pool within his soul. Ripples spread, the chaotic energy calmed, and it coalesced into a stable sphere. Adrien opened his eyes, now shining with brilliant blue. It's done. This time it's not a soul mana core made for others, but my own soul mana core. I did it. It's complete. I have created a soul mana core. A golden projection window suddenly appeared before him. Soul mana core created. He reached out and touched it, puzzled. A status panel? It looks exactly like the status messages I used to send to my master when I was a sword. Why is it appearing for me now? The system began processing data, restoring connection to origin. Connection restored. Connection status poor. Connection extremely unstable. Warning messages flooded his vision. Most abilities were unavailable. Only a few were accessible. The judgment ability is now available for limited use. You can now assess the potential of opponents of lower or equivalent level to yourself. What the hell? He blurted as more notifications appeared. The Heavenly Eye ability is now available for extremely limited use. You can see better. The Heavenly Ear ability is now available for extremely limited use. You can hear better. He snapped his head toward the window. Abilities? His vision magnified, piercing through the foliage to look down at the garden below. He could see each leaf on the trees with astonishing clarity. I can definitely see better than before. Suddenly voices drifted into his ears from outside. He couldn't make out the words at first. He concentrated. The maid's whispers in the hallway became crisp and distinct. Don't you know his temperament? He would have caused a huge uproar by now. He realized the range of this power. I can even hear sounds outside the door, but the strain was too great. A splitting headache tore through his skull. Golden warning windows. Internal mana has been completely depleted. Forcing use of abilities is terminated. He clutched his head as the system abruptly shut down. So that's it. This is what extremely limited means. Perceive everything from every direction without a single blind spot. The absolute senses I had as a sword are gone. For now, by drawing out a tiny amount of magical energy, I can only eavesdrop on sounds outside the door or see a bit more clearly. That will change as I expand my mana reservoir. His stomach let out a loud growl. He was starving. Food had to be brought immediately. First, I need to focus on adapting to this human body. After that, the magnificent castle stood tall under the brilliant sun. Inside, the queen opened her arms with a warm smile. How commendable. You drank every drop of the tonic your mother sent. At last you've learned to cherish your body. Ah, by the way, do you know who this is? Adrien looked at the man coldly. Don't remember. The queen turned to the scarred man. It seems he truly has amnesia. So you must help this child. The queen's brother watched silently, thinking. I kept wondering who he was. Turns out he's the queen's brother. The queen now smiled at him. After all, isn't he your only nephew? He sneered. You speak as if I've lost something important. Anyway, his past wasn't exactly spotless. Then he thought inwardly. He seems to dislike me at a glance. He continued, let me be clear. All I can do for him is help remove some of that excess fat. I cannot provide anything beyond that. So abandon any useless expectations. Don't forget that notion. Scene cuts to the training yard. In an instant, Adrien was beaten and tossed about on the arena floor. He stared at the boy with murderous intent. From now on, every bite you eat, every drink, every breath must have my permission. If you expect to be treated like a prince, give up now. Try your hardest. Who knows? I might change my mind and teach you a bit of our clan's secret swordsmanship. He gritted his teeth, feeling deeply insulted by that attitude. Ridiculous. You want to teach me? Teach someone who was once trainer to undefeated knights. The master of the founding king who built this country. Teach me, he added. Seeing you're fat, you must be furious. Adrien stood up. Sir, let's make a bet. Within half a year, I will force you to acknowledge me. He thought to himself, I need to shatter that smug look in his eyes. He smirked confidently. If I fail, I'll do whatever you say. However, if I succeed, you must grant me one thing I request. He smiled like a predator eyeing its prey. Interesting. Very well. I should have at least one thing to amuse me. Suddenly he gasped, his body changing slightly. I spoke boldly, but his eyes widened in alarm. This damn body has to use mana. Blue energy flared around Adrien. First I'll focus on burning fat all over. He stomped the ground with an explosive force, his heavy body moving at unusual speed. His eyes widened in genuine shock. That kid, don't tell me. That kid, don't tell me. His hand grabbed him. Who? You. You actually created a soul mana core. He stood up straight, feigning innocence. Oh, this? He raised a hand wreathed in blue flame. Yes, I successfully made one not long ago. So? Regretting your bet. His expression shifted from shock to anger. What were you thinking, making a soul mana core? Don't gloss over it. Where the hell did you learn that soul mana core training method? You look like you don't even know you did anything wrong. A soul mana core is a crude technique only low-level mercenaries learn. The remark left him astonished, and he blurted out loudly. What? His face remained a mask of pure shock, eyes wide and hollow, sweat pouring down his neck. He couldn't process the information. What do you mean? He replied coldly. You'll see faster if you look for yourself. With a fluid motion, the Count raised his hand, green energy spiraling around his iron gauntlet into a perfect radiant circle. Look closely. Adrien analyzed the spectacle inwardly. The mana chain formed a circle, and suddenly a gigantic sword of green energy shot from the Count's hand, slicing through the air with terrifying force. The gust alone nearly knocked him off his feet. He explained the modern era. Times have truly changed. Have you ever heard of class differences? Ernest has the property of shattering sword chi produced by a soul mana core. Moreover, training Ernest is much easier and far more stable than maintaining a soul mana core. Those who stubbornly clung to the soul mana core technique until they utterly collapsed 100 years ago. That is why, in this era, no one is keen on using soul mana cores anymore. Cut to a later time. He was intently reading a basic theoretical book on Ernest. Times really had changed. Mages use circles, while knights weave chains to gather mana. A knight's rank is divided according to the number of chains woven. Single chain, double chain, triple chain, quadruple chain, and quintuple chain. He lowered his hand, thinking inwardly. I suppose it's not entirely worthless. Altringen. Yeah, I feel like I've heard that name somewhere before. His eyes widened. A memory from centuries past surfaced. A rough man in a dark cloak standing in a blizzard, holding a blazing sword. Long ago, a voice from the past rang out. Are you the famed Holy Sword? My name is M.S. Altringen. I have come to see who is more deserving of the title Holy Sword. He recognized the connection. Someone had once come to him using strange techniques, not swordsmanship, nor magic. Huh. The name sounded familiar. So what ultimately happened to that man? Cut to the next day. He was preparing to train when the Count's voice rang out. You read that book all night last night, didn't you? You've realized it, haven't you? How foolish that choice was. He spoke up immediately. Well, I don't feel I made the slightest mistake. He sighed. You don't understand the situation, or you refuse to admit it. He clenched his fist, the blue flame growing ever fiercer. You see, not all soul mana cores are the same. Also, have you heard of class differences? The Count looked down at him, unimpressed. I wonder what nonsense you're spouting? I don't know. Occasionally, there are types like you among mercenaries. Those who delude themselves into thinking they're some hero from centuries ago. Do you know what happened to all of them? They all perished, unable to overcome even 2 chain ranks. If you think you're different from them, then try defeating a double chain knight. Then I'll become your guardian as your mother wished. He smirked in reply. His confidence remained unshaken. Would it be good for me to have you as my guardian? I'm not so sure. Wind swept across the training yard, the atmosphere growing tense. You just questioned my qualifications as your guardian? I am the Count of the Kingdom and the commander of the veteran army, the master of the Black Spear Company, and one of the 5 silver mages serving the king, the one who wove 4 chains. A 4-chain knight, Bale Valhard. That is the name of the man who will stand behind and protect you. Is that status sufficient? Without warning, green energy extended behind him like a comet. He gritted his teeth, his face contorted with effort. Immediately, the guards present drew their swords to protect their charge. Stand back. The Count unleashed 3 forceful impacts, sending shockwaves through the dust. He looked down at his struggling nephew, his gaze a mix of amusement and warning. Don't break your promise later. A while later, Adrien collapsed onto the cold stone floor of his chamber, utterly exhausted. He lay sprawled, chest heaving as he fought for breath. He nearly died. A voice interrupted his recovery. That's enough for today. The words echoed in his head. The Count smiled, a dangerous glint flickering in his eyes. You dared challenge me, thinking you'd earn my recognition with that kind of courage? Double chain? If you can beat even a single chain knight, consider yourself lucky. Inside the palace, Adrien, now weary, muttered to himself, that bastard like a devil. He opened the door to find a man wearing round spectacles. Prince, I've been waiting for you. His eyes widened. The royal physician. Why is he here? He thought in rising panic. The physician bowed deeply and humbly. It's an honor that you remember someone as lowly as me. The queen ordered magical treatment for you. Now, your highness, over here. Adrien shouted, pale with fright. He shoved the bewildered doctor toward the door. Oh no, I don't need it. You should leave at once. Bam. He forced the physician out and leaned his back against the heavy door, gasping. Are you trying to make all the hells I went through today meaningless? After that, the scene shifted to the luxurious dining room. The door opened. Is your brother here? Adrien froze mid-step. Standing in the doorway was a handsome man with wavy brown hair. Adrien looked at him and thought, what kind of freak is this? A passing knight announced. That's the 3rd prince. My lord. He wondered in his head. The 3rd prince him? The 3rd prince entered. I heard you had an accident, but you look healthier than I expected. What a pity. Adrien ignored the taunt and continued shoveling food into his mouth. So what do you want to say? You just came to pick a fight? A prince must have nothing better to do. The 3rd prince's expression immediately darkened, his eyes flaring with suppressed malice. You fool, stabbing yourself with a sword, and yet you say that. He regained his composure, his gaze fixed on Adrien. There's talk of fighting a double chain knight. About that. How would you feel if I were your opponent? The dining room was filled with a silent tension as 3rd Prince Julian left, wearing a smug, arrogant expression. Adrien remained at the long table, staring at the spot where his brother had stood, brows furrowed in genuine confusion. What was that guy about? Why are all the Leon Burke descendants like that? A nearby knight spoke up, explaining with the reverence given to a prodigy. Your Highness, 3rd Prince Julian has been famed for his swordsmanship since childhood. Adrien showed no impression, almost bored. What, that brat? He added. At only 14, he has woven 2 chains. That speed is truly fast. Suddenly, the heavy silence was broken by anxious stammering. Yes, Your Highness, I apologize for the disturbance, but there are many letters for you. Adrien blinked at the mountain of papers. Letters? He picked one up, his mind spinning. Why had those people previously shown no interest in this body? And now, suddenly, he tore the envelope open, his eyes skimming the contents, his expression shifting from confusion to cold awareness. The letter read, I apologize for the previous incident. Your Highness, I presumptuously request a duel. If Your Highness still has difficulty finding a sparring partner, please grant me the first opportunity. The implication was too clear. A dark vision flooded Adrien's mind. They were vultures circling a corpse. He realized the truth. In short, this was a chance to legally get a shot at beating that bastard. Adrien lowered the letter, veins standing out at his temple. Then a sly, crooked smile spread across his face. It seemed he'd become an easy target. The maid whispered, "Yes, Your Highness." Adrien gave an order, his eyes lighting with predatory intent. "Have those who sent these stacks of letters write down all their names for me." The scene shifted to the stone training yard under the blazing sun. A crude wooden sword clattered to Adrien's feet. The Count stood towering before him. "Take up the sword. For the bet to be valid, you must at least know a bit of swordsmanship. I don't want to hear any excuses about you losing because you weren't taught the basics." Adrien grumbled inwardly as he dropped to his knees to pick up the weapon. "You could have handed it to me. What an annoying personality." He gripped the hilt and lifted. A jolt ran through his body. His eyes widened until almost all white, pupils trembling. "My muscles hurt so much." His body went rigid in pain. The Count stared, stunned by the sudden reaction. "Wait, you didn't receive the healing magic?" His face remained serious. "If you're a knight, you should know this, right? Healing magic only restores muscles to their original state. It doesn't strengthen them." The Count sighed. "Very well. Anyway, that's not what I meant to say. I don't intend to demonstrate this many times today, so watch closely. This is the technique the kingdom's knights learn to build the foundational swordsmanship practiced across the realm." The Count moved. In an instant, he vanished, leaving only an afterimage of a blade slashing across the air. Multiple slashes occurred simultaneously, forming an illusion of blue light. A gust of wind burst outward when the Count finished the form. The posture was perfect. Adrien sat collapsed on the ground, gaping up, his eyes reflecting the remaining energy. "Did you just say that's the sword-style knights learn to build their foundation?" The Count sheathed his sword. "Because it's a training style, it may lack sharpness, but it stays true to the basics, so there's no better style to learn swordsmanship from. Given your talent, it might even be beyond you." A low chuckle escaped Adrien's lips. It grew louder. He stood there clutching his stomach, laughing heartily at the sky. The Count looked at him as if he'd finally lost his mind. But Adrien wasn't laughing at the absurdity of the situation. He was laughing at the irony of history. No matter how much time had passed, the great swordsmanship that once beheaded the raging dragon was now being treated like a mere training technique. The Count added, "Of course, this alone won't win you the bet. After mastering the basics, you can beg the Queen to hire another tutor, or—" Adrien cut him off sharply, hoisting the heavy wooden sword onto his shoulder, a blaze of determination in his eyes. "No need. I won't learn any other sword styles, because this alone is enough." The Count regarded him with skepticism. "Suit yourself." Adrien tightened his grip on the hilt, swung the sword in a slow, heavy, pathetic arc. The blade cut through the air. Adrien gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. The truth was the dragon-slaying style was now regarded as a commonplace training technique. He hated admitting it, but perhaps it was natural because that dragon-slaying sword lacked the will to slay dragons. Those who had discarded the soul, mana core, and forgotten how to channel will into the blade couldn't possibly have the vision to recognize the true value of the dragon-slaying sword. Adrien's line of thought was cut off by the wooden sword as the Count blocked the swing. "Strength doesn't enter the blade just because you tense your arms. Have you already forgotten what I just taught you? Into the gut and into the legs as well." Adrien dropped to one knee. He panted, his body protesting loudly. Indeed, even now he was a weak, clumsy body, incapable of imitating a fake dragon-slaying style. He planted the wooden sword into the ground and pushed himself up. "I will prove that the dragon-slaying style is not a discarded relic like a pair of torn shoes." 1 day, 2 days. A week passed. The layer of fat on his body began to shift, tightening under unrelenting pressure. And a month passed. In the darkness of his room, Adrien meditated, a glowing blue mana orb shining in his hands. His face grew slimmer. The jawline began to show. He succeeded in transforming his physique after arduous training. The features of pathological obesity had become ordinary obesity. The metamorphosis progressed positively due to the change in physique. The awkwardness had vanished. The effectiveness of his training increased significantly. Your physique changed after continuously accumulating mana. The mana sensitivity disorder trait disappeared and a mana sensitivity trait formed. "I swing the sword. More natural than a month ago." The wooden sword sliced through the air with a high-pitched whine. The Count shouted from outside, "Stop!" Adrien's eyes flared with a strange blue electric light. He didn't hear the command. Stronger than yesterday. More perfect than a moment before. The Count roared, "Didn't I tell you to stop?" But he had slipped into a trance. He raised the sword high, The wood groaned under the terrible pressure of his grip and the mana flowing into it. Crack! The wooden sword shattered. Rain began to fall, turning the training yard into a slippery mire. The sky darkened, lit only by flashes of light. The Count stood watching, seeing blood drip from the prince's hands, mingling with rainwater on the cold stones. Adrien blinked, suddenly coming to, his blue eyes wide and weary. The thick training log was split and exploded outward as if struck by light. The delayed reaction from his final slash had revealed itself. The Count lunged forward, grabbed Adrien's shoulder. "You idiot, training on a day like this? If that had been a real sword, you wouldn't have come away unscathed." The information system reported that it had fully awakened after the extreme focus state. Yet the body still remembered that limit sensation. Adrien stared at his hands, numb with pain. A super focus trait had newly formed. A weak, delirious laugh rose from his throat. "Haha, if I focus like that again, I might get struck by lightning and die." Thud! His legs buckled, and he fainted. The knights cried out in alarm. "Your Highness!" But the Count caught him. He looked down at his grandson's now peaceful face. Despite the harsh training, the contempt that had filled the Count's eyes was gone, replaced by a complex mix of worry. That stubborn kid. Adrien slowly opened his eyes and woke. He sat up and thought to himself, "Was I unconscious?" He rubbed his head thoughtfully. "I must have underestimated this body's limits. When I was a sword, I achieved every possible feat. Unknown war hero, sainted blade, mercenary king, founding king, leading wars to glory, elevating both body and soul. I guided heroes, Gruhan. But those memories were tinged with hollow awareness, a ring of light illuminating the loneliness of my past existence. A wise advisor and an excellent teacher, yet forever destined to be the third wheel." He looked down at his human hands, rough, scarred, trembling with exhaustion. "That's why I swung the sword until I reached that realm, intoxicated by the feeling of turning every drop of sweat, effort, and achievement into my own. At this rate, this weak body will soon collapse. I need to balance mind and body." Time passed in the silence of meditation and focus. It had been over a month since I formed the Soul Mana Core. I had gathered a fair amount of mana since then, so I would soon be able to move to the next stage. A notification panel appeared. "Through persistent effort, you have successfully accumulated mana to a certain degree. Your body can now tolerate a bit more mana. Your Soul Mana Core has been expanded. Your body can now endure a bit more mana. Your physique has changed due to the expansion of the Soul Mana Core." Adrien's eyes snapped open, flaring with intense green. "Done. Well then, let's see." With a deep breath, he swung the sword. A notification popped up. "You have reached the way of the sword level. You can now use the most basic level of aura. With this I can handle the basics." Many days later, the castle yard buzzed with knights and whispers. The Count looked at Adrien and said, "Rumors are spreading across the kingdom." He immediately asked, "Rumors?" Count Bale Valhard looked utterly exhausted and irritated. "About your bet. TCH, it's made even me quite annoyed. Wouldn't it be better to just quickly find a dueling opponent?" Adrien looked up, unconcerned. "Ah, that matter. As for the opponent, I've already decided who it'll be." A vision of his younger brother surfaced. "More importantly, sir, it will be difficult for me to face a paired duel right away. So how about I fight a few single duels first?" The Count replied, "That's up to you." Then he turned to a knight. "Carl, how did the thing I asked you go?" Carl bowed and handed over a file. "Yes, your Highness. I arranged it as you requested. Here is the list of those who filed requests to duel you. However, your Highness, do you intend to spar with them?" Adrien replied at once. "And what of it?" Carl's face darkened. "Most of these people hold grudges against you. They might try to harm you under the guise of a spar." Adrien smiled, calm and knowing. "I know that, which is why you must act as my referee." "Sir." The Count fell silent as he looked at him. Adrien's shoulder wooden practice sword, grinning broadly. "I don't ask for anything fancy. Just don't let anyone die in a match. You can grant me that favor, can't you?" A few days later, the day of the first match arrived. Bright sunlight shone down on the palace as a young brown-haired man approached the gate, sweat beading on his face as he muttered, This is the palace of the first prince, where that bastard lives." He clenched a scrap of paper, his face showing anger and worry. A notice board introduced him, Taylor Tailheim, the second son of an ordinary baronial family. Years earlier, the scene cut to a lavish banquet hall washed in golden light. Adrien, younger and fatter than and drunk, laughed madly, pointing his grease-stained finger at a disheveled noble family. Look at that mess. From their clothes to their manners, he reeks of a peasant. Look at him, thrilled just to be at a royal banquet. He thought, my father and brother suffered an indelible insult from that wretched prince. Our family's honor was trampled, and my father and brother have been the noble's laughingstock ever since. Adrien Leon Burke, today you'll pay dearly for that day. He stepped into the arena where Adrien waited. Beside him stood the imposing figure of Count Bale Valhard. Taylor bowed stiffly. I salute the prince, first Prince Adrien Leon Burke. He drew his sword with a cold hiss. I am Taylor, second son of House Talheim. I am a single-chain squire and the sword practitioner of the Talheim family. Adrien glanced at him with bored indifference and pointed, good grief, why so formal for a practice match? It's not even an official bout for that matter. Is he really a knight? He looks terribly frail. Taylor's face twitched with anger. As the rumors said, he was rude and arrogant, unaware of his station and ignorant. Enough. Count Bale Valhard's deep voice cut through the tension. He stepped forward. His authority was absolute. I understand your feelings, but the match hasn't begun. Control yourself. Taylor flinched, his face falling from triumph as he realized he'd gone too far. Count Bale Valhard, I am honored to meet you. Then the Count looked at him. You should have behaved better in the past. Adrien turned away, annoyed. Oh, great. Always dragging up the past at every opportunity. The Count raised a hand. Both of you, take your positions. The match begins. Taylor wrapped his body in a thin blue aura. He moved with blinding speed, leaving streaks of light as he raced around the arena. Immediately, they lunged at each other, their blades locked, metal grinding on metal. Taylor glared at Adrien, his eyes strained with tension. Adrien's expression was calm, almost indifferent, blocking the strike with a simple, efficient motion. He commented, too many unnecessary moves. Taylor's eyes widened in shock. He saw Adrien standing firm with ease. This was a soul mana core. Suddenly he was flung backwards, exclaiming, a soul mana core can't block a mana chain. Adrien replied nonchalantly, is it because you only have one ring that I only felt a bit of numbness in my hand? Suddenly, a low vibration issued from Taylor's weapon. The knights watching from the sidelines drew a deep breath, a sound from a sword. Could it be? Count Bale Valhard's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. A sentient sword? Taylor surged forward, charging again, shouting in despair. No way. He swung his sword down with all his might. Adrien blocked it again. Sparks flew. After a while, a fierce struggle. Neither seemed able to be defeated. Adrien felt slightly tired, thinking to himself, they say a single ring is incompatible with a soul mana core. That saying is indeed accurate. I felt the mana could backlash at any moment. However, he glanced at Taylor, who was panting with anger. Taylor's face twisted into a mask of malice. You said you're the second son of Baron Talheim, right? Adrien raised his sword, his demeanor shifting. You need to cool your head a little. The scene shifted into Adrien's inner world. Darkness surrounded him as he breathed, focusing on his senses. Awaken, whether called a demon sword, a holy sword, or countless other names. A part of my soul, the soul mana core had accepted a vast will. A color washed over the colorless soul mana core. The draconic will that had slept awake. The sword's memories from its most recent actions and the essence of its heart were forged to slay dragons. Back in the arena, the blue aura around Adrien shifted to a blood-red blaze. The drake-slaying soul mana core had been activated, honed to kill dragons. This was the true power of the drake-slaying blade. Energy erupted upward, forming a terrifying column of red fire. The silhouette of a dragon appeared behind Adrien, its jaws opening in a silent roar that made his opponent tremble. Count Bale Valhard's face drained of color, his composure shattered. Stop! But it was too late. Adrien charged, his eyes blazing with demonic light, the sword tracing a wide arc of red destruction. Before the strike, a fleeting memory crossed his mind. Sir, I have a favor to ask before we spar. If it ever looks like I'm about to kill my opponent, then at that moment, you must stop me, okay? At that instant, a blinding blue bolt exploded as the Count intercepted the blow. The violent resistance from his intervention sent shockwaves rippling across the stone floor. Adrien was flung backward. The knights around, who had been watching in stunned silence, rushed in with drawn swords, surrounding the Count in a panic. A knight shouted, his voice trembling, Count Bale Valhard, what have you done? Depending on the circumstances, you could be accused of attempted regicide. Adrien struggled to get up, his vision blurred and his head spinning. He ordered, "Stand down." I asked him to do it. The knights exhaled. "Your Highness." Adrien's inner thoughts were a tangle of confusion and pain as he looked at his trembling hand. I did ask him to, but I didn't tell him to strike me unconscious. Thud! His eyes rolled back and he collapsed face first to the floor. Darkness enveloped him. A knight's voice echoed, "Your Highness." Time passed in a void of deep blue energy within Adrien's body. The soul mana core thudded desperately to contain the surge of power that had nearly torn it apart. Adrien woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed, sweat soaking his nightshirt. He clutched his chest, feeling the steady rhythm within. I thought my magical heart was about to shatter. His strength was definitely worlds apart from those nameless whipping scoundrels, and I took a direct hit from it. Luckily, there don't seem to be any lasting side effects, but still, well, everything turned out fine in the end. After all, I did win that fight. The door opened, casting a long shadow into the room. "What are you smiling about?" The Count stood there, his figure imposing under the hall light. Adrien asked, "What brings you all the way here?" Adrien asked casually, though he felt the tension. The Count stood over the bed, his expression a mix of anger and bewilderment. "What on earth have you done? What is that corrupt sword? I never taught you a sword style like that." Adrien met his uncle's gaze without flinching. His blue eyes were calm. "I was simply true to the sword's nature." The Count was stunned into silence. He thought to himself, talking about the nature of the sword when the boy has never faced a real battle. The room seemed to darken as the Count uttered the next words. "So the nature of the sword, as you conceive it, is killing intent. Though crude and unpleasant, it's still a truth." Adrien looked at him in surprise. "Surprise. I thought you'd lecture me about the way of the sword being its own perfection, or something, and ramble on for ages." The Count smirked, a rare flash of practicality from a soldier. "I am a soldier, not a knight. I walk the path of victory more than the path of righteousness. However, your sword has gone too far. If your killing intent is excessive, you won't be able to tell friend from foe." Adrien sat quietly, listening as the Count accurately analyzed his motives. "And that's why you caused all this commotion, isn't it? To fix it." The Count folded his arms, his eyes promising sternly, "I will watch you. I will see whether the demon inside you swallows you whole." After 3 days of training matches, Taylor Talheim was exhausted and defeated. Adrien held a practice sword without a scratch on him. "Your name is Taylor Talheim, right? Well done." Over the past 3 days, he had to block a sword with uncontrollable killing intent for 3 straight days. So he truly went through a lot. Adrien observed and said, "But it's a pity, isn't it? You would feel better if you could at least beat me once, but you couldn't." Taylor stammered, unable to refute that. Adrien turned to a nearby maid. "Bring that here." The maid stepped forward, struggling under the weight of a large wooden chest. He saw this and asked, "Prince, what is it?" Adrien wore an oddly serious expression. "I've heard I did some bad things to you in the past. I don't know if this will make up for it, but take this back to Lord Talheim." Taylor clutched the chest in stunned silence. Adrien scratched his cheek awkwardly. "It's not much, just some gold and a letter. Now go, travel safely." As Taylor walked toward the gate, his figure blurred in the blazing sunset. Taylor shouted, "Thank you, Prince." He thought to himself, "I'm not obligated to clean up that bastard's mess, but if I'm going to make someone work, they should be paid properly anyway." A few days later, the kingdom was awash with rumors. The majestic white castle stood under the blue sky, but the whispers in the gardens were full of malice. That damn prince's sparring match has become the hot topic of the realm. His arrogance dug his own grave. The first prince will surely pay dearly for his past transgressions. I wonder how much humiliation he'll have to endure. However, the expected embarrassment never materialized as the days passed. Even after waiting many days, the news everyone expected did not arrive. Instead, positive rumors began to spread. "Oh, you asked how the match went." A knight in gleaming golden armor. "Well, it seems there was some misunderstanding. The first prince isn't as bad as the rumors say." The blue-haired man added, "Both sides did their best in the match, that's all." The blonde-haired man laughed. "Threaten him? I only just recognized the prince's sincerity." Those who hoped for malice were horrified. "What is this?" The royal family must have silenced them. Bang! Adrien slammed his fist down on a wooden barrel. "Shut that monkey up." He only kept silent because he was ashamed of losing to me. Don't these nobles have anything better to do? They should use that time for something useful. The Count smirked. And you have the right to say that? Adrien caught sight of Carl passing by and grabbed his shoulder. Hey, when you go out, make sure to spread the result of the match. Clear. Carl, terrified, nodded furiously. I will. Adrien watched him run off with satisfaction. The rumors should die down now, right? A maid looked at him, worried. There are rumors that the prince threatened him to fake the match's outcome. Adrien stared into the void. His face darkened with irritation. Forget it all. Just keep training, okay? He swung his sword in a massive arc of blue mana, cutting through the air. He moved at dizzying speed. A trail of blue flame stretched behind him as he spun and launched continuous attacks. The air trembled under the force of his magical heart. He was a blur in motion, sweating heavily, utterly focused, venting all his frustration through the blade. Later, beneath the clear sky, Carl approached him holding a dossier. Adrien asked, "How many more duel opponents are there?" Carl checked the list, face serious. "The person who came today is the last one." Adrien caught his breath. "Apprentice knights are no longer enough for me." The knight continued. "At last, it's a knight who has truly mastered swordsmanship. One who wasn't content with merely polishing the family's blade, but a talent who joined an order of knights to train." Seeing that, he said cheerfully, "An apprentice knight of the Iron Lion Order?" The name rang with weight. Arwin Kurgan. The heavy wooden door of the training yard opened, armored footsteps echoing on the stone floor. A figure entered, bathed in light from the entrance. One observer watching the figure approach. "Is that her?" Seeing the emblem on the armor, another replied, "Definitely. Rockflower, thorned rose, you've shattered every man's heart." The knights whispering at the sidelines blushed behind their visors. "She's certainly a great beauty. Imagine, even a woman like that came herself. Somehow, the prince does have talent, doesn't he? Wouldn't it be ridiculous if that woman managed to humiliate the prince?" She paused, and a woman of startling beauty appeared. Her expression was cold, disciplined, and utterly unapproachable. The Iron Lion Knight Order was famed as one of the kingdom's premier corps in both renown and skill. The Order's apprentice knight, Arwin Kurgan, was a promising talent who had secured official membership. The scene snapped back to reality where Adrien stood, panicked. Why would a genius like her come to duel me? The silver-haired knight, skeptical, delivered a harsh truth. There was a bit of a misunderstanding between the prince and Miss Arwin in the past. He replied at once, "Misunderstanding my ass. Look at me. Of course I was the one who made advances toward her. Tell me, what the hell did I do back then?" The maid hesitated, eyes darting anxiously. "The thing is, Your Highness, you harassed Miss Arwin." Adrien's face went blank with horror, his eyes losing focus as the reality registered. Ah, that crazy bastard. A flashback surfaced. A smug, obese Adrien leering at a young Arwin with lustful eyes. He grabbed her shoulder. "You said your name is Arwin, right? You're as pretty as they say. How about it? If you want, you could be my personal maid." The words rang out sharp and decisive. Arwin shrugged him off. "Prince, a knight is not your private property." The fat prince's face twisted in shame and anger, veins bulging on his forehead. That ugly thing. Back in the present, Adrien listened to the account with a hollow expression, his spirit feeling momentarily dead inside. That's what the maid said. It sounded like the twisted flirting of a rotten bastard. "Yes, this is my karma, because no one could ever call her ugly." She bowed with military precision, hand over her chest. "Long time no see, Prince. You are still the same, aren't you?" He awkwardly replied, "I won't say that. You know, I've changed a lot." He thought to himself, to the point that the person inside is completely different. "Yes, it's all because of my karma." Heavy footsteps approached as the maid announced, "Count Bale Valhard has arrived." He stepped forward and asked her, "You are?" She replied respectfully, "Apprentice Knight of the Iron Lion Order, Arwin Kurgan." "Greetings, Count Bale Valhard." The count tilted slightly. "Be careful. The prince's sword is rather vicious." Adrien happened to overhear this betrayal. His face twisted. "Hey, where did you sell out the neutrality of an observer?" The count ignored him, closing his eyes with a satisfied smirk before opening them to command the arena. "Now, both of you, take your positions. From this moment, the match begins." Adrien watched her approach. His smile grew wider. Let's see the skill of the Iron Lion's rising star. Arwin struck first. In an instant she lunged forward, lowered his stance, and drew his sword. His eyes tracked her movements with ease. Her movements were indeed quite sound. Boom! Arwin unleashed a flurry of attacks. Her blade was wrapped in dazzling blue light. Adrien parried, but her speed and ferocity forced him to retreat. He growled softly, feeling the strain on his unconditioned body. His mana began to backlash. Arwin seized the advantage. Her violet eyes locked onto him with fierce resolve. She attacked again. Adrien was pushed back, his foot slipping on the stone. He was completely drawn into her rhythm. This isn't good. A deep crimson energy began to whirl around Adrien's chest. The atmosphere shifted instantly, and a terrifying red aura erupted from him. The dragon-slaying magical heart had been activated. Arwin froze, her eyes widening in genuine shock. She caught a glimpse of chaotic, violent, and hesitant energy in that instant of the sword. Seeing her momentarily fatigued, Adrien added, I suppose not all opponents are the same. You certainly stand on a different level from that trash. While fighting, a gilded interface flickered in his vision. The power of judgment is now available for limited use. A status panel appeared beside Arwin Kurgan. Female, 19, apprentice knight, sword talent, A, archery, B, trait, sword genius, competitive, peerless beauty, tough exterior, soft interior, pure. Adrien smirked, his eyes glowing red in the shadow of his own power. That I can see this with a limited power means she is weaker or has strength comparable to mine. He drove his foot into the ground. The real battle began now. Adrien hurled himself forward, swinging his blade in a powerful overhead chop. They were swept into a dance of destruction as red and blue energies collided violently against the castle walls. The sky darkened, both panting, sweat dripping from Adrien's chin. Arwin also showed clear exhaustion, her chest heaving. The sun had begun to set, bathing the arena in deep amber. Suddenly, a steel blade intervened between them as Count Bale Valhard stepped in. Sword out of sheath. Stop. That's enough for today. We'll continue the match tomorrow. Adrien wiped his mouth, disappointed. Tisich, I was about to finish it. Arwin, unwilling to be outdone, panted back. What a coincidence, I was about to do the same. Sparks flew between their gazes. Adrien taunted. Oh? Want to continue? Arwin narrowed her eyes, violet energy radiating from her. If the prince wishes, as many times as needed. The count bellowed, silencing them both. Enough. It's too late. Both of you go receive treatment immediately. The mage stepped forward. Prince, I'll treat you quickly. Oh my, there's a bruise here too. Nearby, Arwin was being treated as well, but she turned her head away to avoid eye contact. Her expression was conflicted, exhausted yet stubborn. They exchanged a silent glance before going their separate ways. Under the rising sun, Arwin thought to herself as she walked with determination, I will absolutely not lose. Under the rising sun, Arwin thought to herself as she walked with determination, I will absolutely not lose. A few days later, with no winner yet found, the observing knights were gossiping skeptically. Is this the third day already? The knight replied, To be honest, I'm quite surprised. He continued, I've heard a lot about Miss Arwin's skill, but the first prince's skill is equally impressive. Hopefully we'll have a result today. On the arena, the two stood facing each other, swords lowered but ready. Adrien spoke, breaking the silence. Before we start another round, I have something to say. Arwin looked at him coldly. Don't tell me you're about to apologize now. I won't accept an apology. Adrien's expression changed. I understand. She intended to reclaim her wounded pride with her strength, an admirable thought. But well, that's not it. Since we're fighting so fiercely, shouldn't there be a prize? Arwin tilted her head in confusion. Adrien announced clearly for all to hear. How about the loser grants a wish to the winner? If told to kneel, they kneel. If told to bow and apologize, they do so. A knight at the sidelines shouted in alarm. Prince, as a member of the royal family, you mustn't say such things. Please retract your statement. But Adrien waved him off without looking back. Outsiders don't interfere. What do you think? Arwin closed her eyes for a moment, then stepped forward, hand on her sword. Though I'm only an apprentice knight, I'm also a member of the order loyal to the Leonberg crown. I would not dare show such disrespect to the prince. However, if that is what the prince permits, I suppose I have the right to claim the reward of this wager. Adrien laughed loudly, his body flaring with red flame once more. Good thinking. and don't go back on your word later. They clashed immediately. This time Adrien showed no mercy. Red mana roared as he accelerated. Arwin parried, but her eyes widened. Too fast. He wasn't this quick yesterday. Has he been hiding his true power? Adrien's eyes blazed a demonic red. He smirked as a vast spectral dragon roared behind him, the dragon slaying magical heart. He launched a series of powerful strikes. Arwin raised her sword to block, the blows sending up clouds of dust. He slashed across her cheek, fresh drops of blood appearing on her beautiful face. Adrien did not relent, striking a second, faster blow. His sword cut through all her defenses. His face was a mask of concentration and pure power. The impact threw up a massive dust cloud that obscured vision. When the dust settled, the victorious figure emerged. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. Arwin was kneeling. Her sword snapped in two. The audience watched in stunned silence. Count Bale Valhard's eyes widened. Arwin stared at the ground, breathing hard. Her pupils trembled. This can't be happening. I've lost the bet. The reality of defeat weighed heavily on her. Adrien looked down at Arwin Kurgan. I want you. The position, royal guard to the first prince. A role notorious because the prince is known as the kingdom's debauched scoundrel. Contrary to fears, the job wasn't as difficult as expected. The scene shifted to the first meeting between this guard and his master. Karl bowed respectfully, keeping a professional demeanor as he introduced himself. Are you the new royal guard? The guard answered dutifully. Yes, I am eager to serve you, your highness. However, the prince sitting before him was fat, slovenly, and arrogant, simply propping his chin on his hand and looking bored. Very well, I count on you. But he did not vent violent rage indiscriminately, as rumor claimed. In the bright sunlight of the castle yard, Karl watched the chubby prince run past him, panting heavily, sweat flying as he desperately tried to change his condition. Karl quietly observed the prince's resolute yet contemplative expression. Reality contradicted the rumors. Heavy rain lashed the gray stone of the training yard, blurring the world with cold streaks of water. Despite the downpour, a lone figure stood before the wooden training dummy. Adrien, soaked to the bone, swung a wooden sword with relentless determination. Karl watched from the sidelines, muttering, the rain's getting heavy, while others worry, should we stop the prince now? Suddenly thunder ripped the air as the dummy splintered under the prince's blow. Karl's eyes widened in alarm as the prince staggered dangerously. Prince, be careful. But when the lightning lit the scene, it revealed Adrien's exhausted, yet joyful smile among the shattered wooden fragments. Karl was struck by a profound realization. I have a feeling the prince will become a great man. That's what I thought. At that moment, the duel was over. Adrien stood proudly, casting a long shadow over the defeated knight. He looked down at her and made a shocking request. I want you. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. On the sidelines, the knights exhaled in horror, their faces flushed. What? One blurted out, while another covered their mouth and whispered, what a scandal. Karl, watching with a stern gaze, swallowed hard as doubt crept into his mind. Had he misjudged the prince? Arwin, ashamed and trembling, looked up. Her violet eyes widened in disbelief and anger as the prince's shadow fell over her. Is that truly what the prince desires? Adrien stood firm, looking at the kneeling woman not with lust but with a cold, appraising gaze. Of course, in her current state, she is merely an ordinary apprentice knight, unable even to defeat a wretched prince. So what I want is the potential and the future of a knight named Arwin Kurgan. Therefore, Arwin Kurgan become my knight. I need a knight to accompany me, not a knight appointed to protect me by royal decree, but a knight who belongs to me alone. Adrien activated his vision, looking at the golden status board hovering beside her. Talent, swordsmanship, eh? Traits, sword prodigy, competitive spirit, purity. He smiled. And from what I see, you have quite the talent for swordsmanship. Arwin stared, her face smudged with a cut on her cheek. She was taking in the offer. Memories surged in her mind. She stood in a training hall, surrounded by men, yet alone. I became the knight I dreamed of. But the whispers of others echoed in her memory. That child, just as the rumors said, she certainly stands out. She recalled the struggles, the clash of steel, the sweat, the desperate effort to prove herself. No one treated her like a knight. so she tried twice as hard as everyone else. She saw herself standing over a defeated male opponent, declared the victor, yet she felt no joy. Even when she defeated every apprentice knight her age with terrifying speed and skill, the whispers never stopped. Men looked at her not as a warrior, but as an ornament. Isn't Miss Arwin our walking flower pot? Guarding a beautiful woman like Arwin is an honor for a knight. That perception crushed her. She could not become a true knight. But back in the present, Arwin looked up at Adrien, tears welling at the corners of her eyes, her cheeks flushed, not from romance, but from the overwhelming emotion of finally being truly seen. She looked at the prince, standing bathed in sunlight, his expression serious and resolute. He wanted her potential and future as a knight. Is he sincere? She stood and faced him. Please promise me one thing. Please treat me not as a woman, but as a knight. If you do that, I will follow your will, your highness. Adrien answered without hesitation. Very well, I promise. Arwin immediately knelt on one knee, bowing her head, and swore fealty beneath the golden light. I, Arwin, eldest daughter of the Kurgan family, swear fealty to Prince Adrien Leonberg, and pledge my sword and the rest of my life to your highness. Count Bale Valhard watched silently, with a complex expression. Adrien drew a gleaming steel sword as he performed the impromptu ceremony. As the rightful heir of Leon Burke, in the name of Adrien Leon Burke, I dub you knight. Be brave, be courteous, and be loyal. However, the nobility could not understand that purity. In the days that followed, rumors spread like a plague through the castle halls. Swear fealty to that bastard? Does that make any sense? And based on a wager? No less. We must nullify it somehow. The blonde knight whispered to the others, but I hear she refused our assistance. The whispers turned darker and cruder. Good heavens, from what I've heard, isn't there something sordid about this? The female knights murmured in the shadows, covering their mouths to laugh. Is there some relationship with the prince? Maybe he couldn't publicly take her as a mistress because of his reputation, so he used the knightly vow as a cover. It was odd from the start. Why did she attend that shady duel the bastard organized? In his private room, Adrien tore at his hair. This is insane. What kind of villain am I? Am I just the worst kind of scum in the world? Carl stood quietly nearby. Your Highness, about what you said that day. He looked confused. Huh, when was that? Carl continued. A few days ago on the day of the final match. Do you recall what you said to? That. Does that trouble you? Is it true? If a royal decree arrived right now and told you to go elsewhere, wouldn't you go? If you wish, you could also swear the oath later. Carl hesitated, sweat beading on his brow. If I say I will swear the oath, would you accept it? Adrien answered immediately, his face cold. No. Carl was stunned. Adrien turned and looked out the window. I don't want you. There's no pleasure in raising you. Carl asked again. Is that true, your highness? He thought to himself. I'm not joking. I'm serious. Later he read the letter he had just received. To the first prince of the Leon Burke royal family, Adrien Leon Burke is hereby lifted from confinement and ordered to attend the upcoming royal banquet. Adrien stared at it, dazed. What have I done? Thinking about them lifting the confinement a month and a half early, after behaving as if they would lock him away in the first prince's palace and never see him again. I don't know what that man is thinking anymore. As he walked the corridor with Carl, Carl asked, Aren't you happy the confinement is over, your highness? Adrien replied nonchalantly, I don't much care. Even if I leave the palace, I have nowhere to go and no one to meet. I don't know anyone. A maid walked briskly up and stopped him. Your highness, I've just seen an invitation addressed to you. Adrien blinked. An invitation? He took the letter. It bore a silver crest. Yes, this one. He opened it and read. A social club for distinguished young nobles. The maid nodded awkwardly. It's a social gathering the prince used to be a member of. Adrien pointed at himself. Really, me? He looked at the maid's uncomfortable face. Is it some strange place? The maid avoided his gaze. Yes, for a woman like me, the refined tastes of those young nobles are truly incomprehensible. He realized the truth himself. So it's a gathering for drinking and hunting women. He crushed the paper. Forget it. I'm busy enough training. Why should I attend such a useless gathering? But then his eyes caught the signature at the bottom. To Prince Adrien, wise, brave, and profound, from your lifelong friend, Bernardo of House Leon. Adrien froze. He brought the paper closer, narrowing his eyes. Bernardo? That is a name I remember. According to my uncle, They were a house that clung to demonic magic until the end and eventually fell into ruin 100 years ago. Then he said, I suppose I should attend after all. The maid bowed. Understood. I will prepare your things. As Adrien looked down at the letter, clutching in his hand, his inner thought revealed his true motive. I hope that house hasn't entirely lost its pride. Time passed, and the scene opened in a sunlit dressing room. A tailor with pride, gleaming in his eyes, folded his hands respectfully as he admired his work. Your Highness, does the outfit please you? I haven't missed a single instruction of yours. The dominant black, minimal patterns, and an extremely simple design. Standing before the mirror was a completely transformed figure. The obesity that had defined the prince was gone, revealing a handsome, sharp-featured young man with blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. The tailor did not spare his praise. Yet your authority remains as grand as ever. Your Highness, Adrien checked his reflected image. I've really lost a lot of weight. The tailor nodded repeatedly. Your measurements have more than half. I will also take care of the attire for the palace banquet. I'll begin work immediately. But Adrien raised a hand to stop him, a confident smile on his lips. No, wait a little longer. My measurements will change again by then. A few days after the confinement was lifted, the scene shifted to the bustling streets of the capital. I'm on my way to that damn social club for privileged young nobles. Inside the carriage, Adrien leaned against the luxurious red velvet seat and yawned deeply. Being a prince is truly exhausting. The clothes, the carriages, the guards. Everything is oppressively constraining. He looked at the maid across from him and asked, that scar, how did it happen? The maid flinched, stammering in fear. It was my incompetence, Your Highness. It is because of what you were right to reprimand me for. A violent flashback cut through the present. The obese tyrant version of Adrien from the past screamed again. Distorted images of that fat prince appeared, shouting meaningless insults. This sword is mine now. Ha ha ha. Even your peasant is pretty. The deeper I dig into this body's past, the more horrific stories I find. Come to think of it, I've known this maid for months, and yet I didn't even know her name. He decided to fix that immediately. What's your name? She jumped, eyes wide with fear. I am Adilia Byron, Your Highness. Adrien froze. The name struck him like lightning. Byron. His expression grew serious. He touched his chin in thought. That's a house barely present on the noble rolls. I didn't expect to hear that name here. In the distant past, when even cities did not yet exist, let alone kingdoms among the continent's various races, it was an age when the weak were plundered and slaughtered as a matter of course. There were those who put an end to the history of those wretched creatures. At the end of the Great War, for the last saviors who allowed humanity to rise and become the continent's dominant race, people bestowed upon them the title of the Five Extremes. The words of one of those five heroes, Ruin, she said to the sword in her hand. Have you ever thought about that? The scene widened into a blood-soaked battlefield. A vast army and monsters charged toward her. She stood there unflinching, holding the sword with the golden hilt. What you and I will do after this battle is over. She looked out at the remaining monsters, her eyes blazing with a terrifying golden light. Do scum like this crawl on like maggots, thinking there's something to eat? You bastards only think about filthy things. With that shit of a body, all you are good for is clowning around. Her wrath was boundless. The holy sword in her hand vibrated violently at those coarse words. Back in the quiet carriage, Adrien covered his ears with a grimace. Just thinking about it dirties my ears. Still, the descendants of Byron, huh? What on earth happened to make them like this? The carriage came to a stop. Your Highness, we have arrived. Prince Adrien stepped out, his boot touching the rope. Perfect timing. He pointed at the maid inside. Adilia, we'll talk later. Adilia folded her hands to her chest, embarrassed. Outside, standing in the garden of a large house, was a man with long gray hair and a loosened tie, smiling broadly. Prince, are you well? Welcome, Prince Adrien Leonberg. I am Eli of Housley. I cannot express how happy I am to see you safe and sound. Adrien scrutinized him. This guy is a descendant of Housley, looking no different from a pampered playboy. Eli leaned in, feigning concern. You must have endured a great deal to become so thin. Adrien curled a lip. Oh, Eli blinked. Prince, is something wrong? Do you still feel unwell? Adrien passed him. No, it's nothing. I just thought coming here was the right thing to do. Thanks to you. Today will be interesting. Eli watched him go, completely baffled. Inside the social club, the air was thick with decadence. the warm golden light of chandeliers illuminating an excessively lavish scene. Ha ha! And then that girl lifted her skirt so wide, as if she'd never known shame. A woman giggled unpleasantly. Oh, don't tease me. I hate that so much. Eli observed Adrien. The protagonist sat silently, stirring his drink, his expression detached from the surrounding chaos. Eli thought to himself, it's strange. Normally this bastard would be plastered drunk and flirting everywhere by now. His aura felt markedly different from before. A nobleman with swept-back brown hair and a flushed face flopped down on the sofa next to Adrien. He laughed lecherously. I've heard, Your Highness, that you plucked the Iron Lion's flower. Rumors are everywhere. Seeing her in armor is enough to make one swoon. But I wonder how exquisite the flesh beneath must be. A single word cut through the noise like a blade. Hey, do you have any siblings at home? The noble blinked, thrown by the unrelated question. Have you forgotten? I have a younger brother. Adrien smiled, a terrifyingly cold smile. Then that's a relief. What? With no warning, Adrien's fist became a blur of motion. The protagonist's fist slammed straight into the nobleman's face. The impact savage, blood spraying into the air as the noble's head snapped violently backward. Crash! The nobleman was hurled away, glass shattering everywhere. The women screamed in horror. The music cut off. Eli stared in shock, sweat streaming down his face. Adrien adjusted his cuff, looking down at the blood-smeared mess on the floor with threatening, bright blue eyes. What a relief! Your line will not be wiped out. He drove the heel of his boot into his groin. The nobleman howled. Adrien looked down, his face shadowed, radiating pure, unadulterated authority. He calmly pronounced judgment on the defeated man. From now on, your younger brother will be the heir. Adrien grabbed the battered noble by the collar and hoisted him up. His face was now a chaotic mess of blood and bruises. He stammered in confusion. Why are you doing this, Your Highness? He drilled into him with cold, lifeless eyes, an expression without mercy. Listen carefully. I can tolerate you thinking me a bastard, but I will not tolerate you treating me as if I truly am one. The noble and his cronies stood frozen, question marks hovering above them as they tried to process the prince's logic. What the hell is he talking about? Adrien answered with another brutal swing of his fist. It means you need to be beaten even more. The blow landed with a sickening crunch. The noble collapsed, but Adrien had already shifted his attention elsewhere. Adrien called sharply. Eli, the man who had been staring in shock, immediately dropped to his knees. Teach. Yes, Your Highness. He looked down at him with a twisted, blood-splattered smile. Didn't I warn you? Today seems it will be most entertaining. The noble, seeing his face, thought to himself, why is this crazy bastard suddenly acting like this? Adrien issued an order that froze the blood of everyone in the room. Summoned the royal knights immediately. Eli's eyes widened in shock, but the command was absolute. He scrambled up, shouting, I obey, and ran out of the room. The nobles huddled together in the middle of the room. Adrien wiped the blood from his cheek and looked at the trembling crowd with contempt. Those women leave. He gave a dismissive order. Another noble seized the chance and tried to blend into the departing women. He tiptoed away, sweat beading on his forehead, hoping to escape the prince's wrath. But Adrien's voice cut the air like a whip. I believe I said women. The noble froze, startled, when Adrien turned his cold blue gaze on him. If you want to leave, go ahead. But if you do, you'll leave here as a woman. A veiled, terrifying threat. None of you performed the ritual of kneeling before Prince. You showed not an ounce of respect. You mocked me, right in front of me, and insulted my knight. What charges from the shadows could apply in this case? The prince's knights intervened because they dared to disdain the royal family. That constitutes an offense of insulting the crown and more, since they challenged royal authority. This is tantamount to treason. Please issue an order. Your Highness, whom shall we force to kneel here? Adrien stood there surrounded by knights, their faces sharp and uncompromising, cold smiles blooming on all their lips. Adrien stood there surrounded by knights, their faces sharp and uncompromising, cold smiles blooming on all their lips. Consequences came fast and severe. In the royal palace, the king sat on his throne, his face twisted with anger. 14 noble scions have been detained. Insulting the crown, treason. I listed every grand-sounding charge I could find for them. Do you know what you have done? Having spoken, he thought, since he acted in the name of royal authority, they must be punished harshly. But with 14 clans involved, we cannot simply ignore the potential backlash. Adrien finally spoke, a confident smile cutting through the tension. Are you worried about rebellion? They are merely disposable within their own houses. They are irredeemable vermin who would only sully their family names if kept. Send a letter. The king looked up, puzzled. A letter to whom? You keep asking while you already know the answer. Aren't there people better suited than anyone to handle each family's internal trouble? They're the siblings of those damned ones who were arrested. Am I wrong? The king leaned back on his throne. Leave. Adrien bowed brightly. Yes, father. And he thought, see? Nothing left to say, right? The atmosphere then shifted from the grand palace to a quiet, sunlit room. Adrien smiled gently, his demeanor completely different from the tyrant at the club. Now, you needn't worry. I will not harm you. The maid trembled before him, tears streaming. Your Highness, precisely what did this low-born girl do wrong? Adrien studied her, noting her fear. That bastard must have tormented her severely. It was a house nearly erased from the rolls of nobility. Even direct descendants knew nothing of the name Bayern. A glorious history had been wiped out, and their peerless techniques severed. Great renown, noble pride, all vanished without a trace. Yet a status panel appeared beside her. Traits: butcher berserker, fragile heart, psychological caregiver slave. Adrien flinched, sweat pouring down his brow. Wait, hold on, what are these traits? Butcher, goes mad at the sight of blood. Berserker, a woman crazed and obsessed with battle. Fragile heart, has a tender, fragile soul. Caregiver, skilled at tending to others. Adrien clutched his head. She possesses unparalleled talent, yet she doesn't have a single trait to control her madness. He stared at the terrified girl. Would it really be okay to unleash that madness on the world? I have to try. He glanced back at the status panel once more. Sword talent S. After all, it's an S-rank talent. His eyes locked onto one specific trait. Slave psychology, a trait where the person feels great joy in having a master to serve wholeheartedly. There happened to be a trait he could exploit. So Adrien stepped forward, his voice authoritative. Adilia Bayern, swear fealty to me. Adilia blinked, completely confused. Huh? What do you mean? Adrien looked down at her. I am telling you to become my knight. Swear here. Right now. Adilia recoiled in fright. Your Highness, that is not something a low-born girl like me can take on. But Adrien cut her off. You say your house has fallen. I will take responsibility for your family. In return, you must swear fealty to me and serve me as your master. Adilia looked up, her eyes wide with shock as a quiet hope repeated in her head. If you cannot control your madness, I will hold the reins for you. She spoke. You will truly take responsibility for my family? Adrien stood there, his silhouette framed by the large window. Yes. If you wish, I will summon them to the capital so you can see them whenever you like. Adelia's expression changed, fear dissolving and replaced by a bright hope. Desperate as I am, I will do as you command. Adilia, eldest daughter of House Bayern, I pledge fealty to your Highness Adrien Leonberg. I will serve you as my master and devote my life to you. He reached out and placed his hand on her head. Good. From now on, you will obey my commands unconditionally. Adilia blushed faintly, her green eyes alight with new purpose as she received his touch. I obey. Beads of sweat dotted her cheek as he looked at the girl who had just pledged her life to him. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. Is this the right choice? Whispers echoed through the dark corridors like poison. I hear the first prince, who's been oddly quiet lately, has started acting like a bastard again. Not only did he force a knight to swear allegiance by vile means, but he also kidnapped nobles' children, beat them, and even threw them in prison. Now people say he's turning a maid, who has never even held a sword, into his personal knight. Clearly he's trying to build a harem under the guise of private knights. Inside the sunlit palace, the air felt stifling. Adrien sat on a velvet chair, propping his chin on his hand, his eyes sharp with irritation. Since when did everyone care about me so much? I only took one personal knight, yet since I woke up, everyone has something to say. Images of his critics flashed through his mind. The king, wearing a heavy golden crown, appeared with a disappointed expression. I'm busy trying to clean up the mess you've made. And yet you're here indulging in women. Then the scarred face of Count Bale Valhard. Pathetic. Have you completely abandoned your wagers? Finally, the smug face of the third Prince Julian curled into a mocking sneer. You appointed a maid as a knight? That is so like you. My God. How did the rumor spread so fast? Suddenly the door burst open without waiting for an answer, and a maid rushed in, announcing loudly, "Your Highness, the Empress has arrived." Adrien threw his hands up in annoyance, staggering in his chair. "Ah, come on." The Empress entered, her luxurious purple gown sweeping the floor. She looked down at her son, her gaze a mix of stern judgment and a strange relief. "Just when I thought you'd reformed, it seems you intend to return to your old ways. Actually, that's for the best. Once you find a proper spouse and settle down, you'll surely stop wandering like this. Trust me, this time I will find a suitable partner for you." She turned and left as quickly as she had come. Adrien was left alone in the quiet room, slumped in his chair, staring into space. I don't even know anymore. Afterward, the room was bathed in soft light. Adilia sat anxiously on a chair, looking up at Adrien with bright, hopeful green eyes. "So, will I have mana now?" Adrien loomed over her, gentle but serious. "Yes, a very special kind of mana." A green energy began to crackle around Adrien's raised hand. "Even if the world has completely forgotten the Iron Blood Sword Marquis, I have not forgotten anything." Golden flames formed the silhouettes of armored boots walking in midair. The footsteps she left behind, the sword dancing at the tips of her fingers, and the glorious beating of her very heart. A burst of golden light exploded from Adilia's chest, and she felt a warmth she had never known before. A notification panel popped up. "Adilia Byron has sensed mana. You have successfully transferred mana to Adilia Byron. Mana has been successfully formed within the body. A magical mind core has been created." She looked down at her hands, trembling as golden energy radiated from her body. "Is this mana?" Adrien stepped back. "What you've just done is the method for forging a magical mind core. From now on, practice it yourself whenever you have time." Suddenly, Adrien's vision blurred. He staggered forward and collapsed onto the sofa, utterly drained. Adilia cried out, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Adrien clutched the sofa cushion, trembling, thinking bitterly, "I didn't expect to end up like this just from creating a small magical mind core." Then he said, "I'm just a little tired." Adilia looked at him, her face full of worry and remorse. "Why would you go this far for someone as lowly as me?" Adrien turned his head away. "It's fine. Now you may leave." Adilia hesitated, then bowed deeply. "I vow to serve you with loyalty for the rest of my life." A smirk returned to his face. "Just don't forget that I am your master." Adilia looked up at his radiant face, trembling with overwhelming joy. "Yes, yes." She clasped her hands together, truly radiating devotion. Adrien turned his back to her. His smile faded into genuine worry. As he walked away, a dark thought crossed his mind. "I fear you will forget that." Indeed, a few days later, a knight looked to him and said, "Your Highness, regarding Bernardo Lee, I've heard he's being held by the royal guards as a witness for the recent uproar. It seems no one is allowed to see him until the trial begins." Adrien blinked in surprise. "A trial? Don't tell me I have to attend that trial too." He shook his head. "The royal family isn't to be judged." Adrien brightened and pointed upward. "That's good news. But a trial, they're really making a fuss over this." Adrien turned to the maid. "Adilia, how are you doing?" Adilia flinched. What do you mean?" Adrien leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Your magical mind core, has it stabilized?" Adilia nodded quickly. "It has stabilized, Your Highness." Adrien suddenly stood up, shedding his relaxed air. "Good. From today on, you will train with me. Go change your clothes and meet me at the training yard. And put that rag down. You are a knight now." The scene shifted to a wide stone training ground under a clear blue sky. Adrien wore a simple white shirt and dark pants, when a stern voice cut in. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Adrien looked toward his uncle. "Can't you see? I'm warming up." Count Bale Valhard frowned, his face darkening. "Not you. I mean that girl." Adrien glanced at her indifferently. "Haven't you heard the rumors? I'm turning her into a knight." The Count's patience snapped, his face contorted with anger as he shouted. "Is the title of knight so trivial to you? Given the current situation, how can you be so reckless?" Adrien clenched his fist and shot back with equal intensity. "Ha! Since when did you become so meddlesome? If you hate it that much, why do you keep coming here?" At that moment, Adelia's legs gave out. "Your Highness, 10 training rounds completed." Watching the two of them argue, she spoke up. "Your Highness, I apologize. It's because of me." Adrien cut her off. "Forget it. Take this. Today I'll teach you the most basic stance. He gripped his wooden sword tightly and assumed a perfect stance. A faint green energy hummed around him. First, take the stance and swing like this. The air was torn by a sharp sound. He turned to Adilia. Try it. Adilia rose anxiously, holding the sword. She copied his stance, her limbs trembling. Like this, suddenly her eyes shifted, her pupils glowing an eerie sap green. Her hesitation vanished. She swung the sword, not the swing of a novice. The blade cut through the air with terrifying speed and precision, creating a shockwave of wind. Count Bale Valhard's eyes widened in genuine astonishment. Adrien froze, a cold bead of sweat rolling down his cheek. He stood stunned, thinking, did she copy it perfectly after seeing it only once? Adilia looked at him, her eyes back to their innocent, uncertain state. Is my stance correct, sir? Adrien stared at her, fear creeping into his chest. Wait a moment. If I let my guard down, she'll surpass me in an instant. I have felt uneasy about how that wretched prince tormented her in the past. If she overtakes me now, Count Bale Valhard stepped forward, stroking his chin, his gaze fixed on Adilia with newfound respect. I didn't expect her to possess such talent. The Count moved between them, his expression grave. Adrien asked, what are you going to do? Don't pay her any mind. The Count dismissed him. You're just an apprentice, only been holding a sword for a few months. You cannot control her, the Count declared, his voice low and dangerous. If you cannot control her, then no one can. Because you. The image shifted to blood and slaughter. That sword had drunk the blood of the giant king Gruhan and countless other beings. Gruhan, part of a soul manifesting according to its wielder's will. Adrien looked up. His eyes were no longer human. They flared a deep, malevolent red. She belongs to you. Do not look at her, and do not desire her. I would hate for someone to take what is mine. But the moment those words were spoken, a sudden change occurred inside him. His sense of reality began to fade. He could not perceive vitality or life, only an overwhelming chill and darkness. Is this an omen? At this rate, this frail body will be swallowed by Gruhan's soul. And that's enough. A brilliant blue light shattered the nightmare into pieces. The red hands dissolved into nothingness. Adrien snapped back to reality, standing in the training yard, his breath a little ragged. He looked down at his hands, the lingering pull of the abyss waning. The Count spoke persuasively. A single ordinary knight can save 10 soldiers. A single outstanding knight can save 100 soldiers. A single outstanding knight can save 100 soldiers. Adrien thought to himself, is that faith? For the sake of the northern border commander's cause. However, he replied casually, unconcerned. The Count froze. Even if she can save countless people? A new voice broke the stalemate. Adilia stepped forward. Count Bale Valhard. The body and heart of this servant already belonged to his highness. Adilia continued, her amber-brown eyes shining with absolute loyalty. I cannot obey you, my lord. The Count stared at her, stunned. Adrien watched the scene with satisfaction. It was worth the effort to pull his soul back. A submissive mindset must obey an entity of higher rank. Adrien curled his lip into a smile, folding his arms, just as she said, and sir, you have nothing left to teach me, right? The goal from the start was only to help me lose weight. If you plan to keep visiting my palace, from now on do not interfere in my affairs. The Count regarded him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Before consenting with closed eyes, I understand. Even after that day, he continued to visit the palace every single day to keep watch over Adilia. Although he could do nothing because scolding and interference were forbidden, Adrien stood to the side observing, smiling to himself. It was amusing to see his arrogant uncle so unsettled. Suddenly, something caught the Count's eye. Adilia stood amid swirling golden embers, her wooden sword radiating a brilliant, fierce aura. Adrien realized the situation a step too late. Wait, has she learned sword resonance already? Adrien applauded loudly. Good, very good. He wiped anxious sweat, thinking, this fast? I could actually be overtaken. Adilia turned to him, beaming with an innocent, adoring smile. The Count's voice was low and dangerous. He strode toward Adrien. Have you also taught her mind demon magic? Adrien looked away, feigning indifference. Yes. Is there something wrong? The Count's patience shattered. Isn't it enough that only you learned that petty trick? He roared, an aura erupting. Adrien's expression immediately turned cold. The mockery vanished, replaced by a steely gaze. Outward, the Count faltered, stunned by that dismissal. There was once a far better path, a potential you couldn't even imagine, and you destroyed it all. He added dismissively, "Escort him out." The hesitant voices between them. "Your Highness." The Count turned abruptly, his cloak sweeping around him. He strode out angrily, his heavy boots thudding on the stone floor. "Forget it, I'll leave on my own feet." As the Count disappeared into the sunset, Adilia continued, "Your Highness, was what I learned just a trick?" Adrien answered firmly, without hesitation, "No, absolutely not." She asked, her voice trembling, "Then why did the Count say that?" Adrien looked toward the setting sun, his expression thoughtful. "Because he does not know that people of this era have completely forgotten what true mind demon magic is like. If they hadn't forgotten, they wouldn't have discarded it like a pair of tattered shoes. He will realize it soon enough." The next day, a surge of energy suddenly halted, a greenish-blue bolt leaping up from the ground near his feet. He planted his wooden sword into the ground, as if issuing a challenge. He replied immediately, "Are you acting as if you will never return?" The Count stared at him. "Prove it. I will only use a single simple round. If you can push me back even half a step, I will acknowledge you." Adrien gripped the wooden sword tighter. "What was that wager back then?" He swung the sword to one side. "Grant a wish, huh?" The Count drew out his wooden practice sword, thin sparks dancing along its blade. "If you win, I will grant you one thing. Whatever it is, if you ask me to pass on the family's secret technique, I will." Adrien curled a smirk, blue flames flaring around him. "That's not what I want." "All right then, fight." The Count dodged the strike with ease, aiming straight for the throat from the outset. Still a vicious blade as always. He launched more strikes, but the Count merely tilted aside to evade each one. Seeing this, he accelerated, unleashing a continuous flurry of attacks. He panted, sweat pouring down his face. The Count parried with his sword, taunting, "Is that all you've got?" He flicked him back. "Have you given up?" Adrien gritted his teeth, straining against the Count's overwhelming force. "Don't fail." Despite the struggle, Adrien's mind remained clear. He analyzed the situation with chilly precision. "He's detestable, but I must acknowledge what needs acknowledging. He's truly strong. He's baiting me, letting me taste an even more humiliating defeat. With mind demon magic at only this level, I'll surely lose as he intends." A crooked smile spread across his face. "Isn't it strange? 400 years ago, countless mind demon knights achieved unbelievable feats. And yet, because a somewhat useful technique appeared, all the arts of those great knights are now treated like trash. It seems people assume the technique called mana chain is a much more powerful way to control mana than mind demon magic." The Count stood opposite him, wind roaring across the training yard. "Exactly what are you trying to say?" Adrien raised his sword, holding it vertical before him. "My view is different. Just because it's mind demon magic doesn't mean they're all the same." "Sir, have you ever heard of a soul armor melody?" The Count frowned. "This is a place for combat, not for discussing such flattering-sounding notions." Adrien scoffed. "I knew you'd say that, since you also call mind demon magic a crude technique, only learned by lowly mercenaries." The Count interrupted. "You talk too much. Do you need more time to catch your breath?" Adrien looked up, his eyes blazing with blue flame. "No." He stepped forward, blue fire surging from his boots, scorching the ground. "The path a knight walks becomes an achievement. 100 victories are my pride. Achievements are engraved into my heart and my strength." The Count gaped. "What?" "A system activated. An engraved achievement becomes a soul armor melody. A soul armor melody has been created, residing within the knight's sword. A humble, ordinary accomplishment I completed over the past half year. Soul armor melody." Notification popped up continuously. "Common soul armor melody. Training ballad has been created. The effect of the training ballad has been activated. This is the true power of mind demon magic." A brilliant, mystical blue radiance exploded, enveloping Adrien's body like a second skin of soul fire. Despite that grand display, the Count's voice cut in with cold, steadfast skepticism. "No matter what you do, the result will be the same. As long as you possess mind demon magic, you will never defeat mana chain." Whoosh! Adrien spun, his eyes blazing blue from his aura, and thrust his wooden sword forward forcefully. The wooden sword collided with the Count's blade, which was shrouded in a dense, fragile field of energy. Indeed, Mana from the chain rings has the property of counteracting mana through mind demon magic. Adrien grit his teeth, sweat beading on his brow as he struggled to hold his stance. The blue flames around him flickered violently under pressure from the Count's tenuous aura. The Count smiled, a self-satisfied grin appearing on his lips. "You're rather good at stubbornly enduring." The Count attacked again, this time faster. Adrien parried, but the blows sent shockwaves down his arms. In the fight, Adrien's inner monologue revealed the harsh price he paid to gain this power. To achieve this ballad, I trained over 100 times and endured the chain ring's mana more than 1,000 times. A power forged to face the knights of the chains. While clashing hundreds of times, I endured thousands of waves. Suddenly, the blue aura around Adrien concentrated into a gigantic, razor-sharp column of light extending from his sword. This was the power of the soul armor melody, the training ballad. Adrien gripped the wooden sword now sheathed in a thick blade of blue mana. The Count looked at the glowing weapon, his expression shifting from mockery to slight curiosity. "Now that looks worth trying." He lunged, vanishing in a blur of speed. Their swords clashed again, creating a shockwave that blew away the dust. Adrien exhaled coldly, trading blow for blow with the Count. The Count thought inwardly, sweat finally appearing on his brow as he deflected an especially heavy strike. He hadn't expected the kid to hold out this long. Smack! He struck Adrien back again to create distance. Adrien skidded across the stone, his boots gouging deep furrows into the floor. He steadied himself, panting, the blue flames around him wavering but never extinguishing. The Count asked again, "How?" Adrien panted, looking at his uncle with defiant eyes. "Didn't I tell you already? Not all mind demon magics are the same." The Count looked back, his tenuous aura flaring threateningly around his shoulders. "You are arrogant." Whoosh! He stepped forward heavily, the ground trembling under his feet. He swung his sword, releasing a wave of pressure that overwhelmed anything he had displayed before. Adrien barely raised his sword to block. The wooden blade groaned under the pressure, and he was hurled against the wall. The Count loomed, his silhouette fearsome against the brilliant sky. "I will stop toying. Enduring this long is commendable. I will give you praise." Adrien thought. As predicted, a common soul armor melody is not enough. The protagonist began to speak. For years ago, the knights committed a grave mistake. They left no enemies for their descendants. At first, everything was surely passed down intact. Sword techniques, the precise methods of training the heart, and the shining soul armor melody. But time gnawed away at those glorious achievements, and ultimately caused them to be forgotten. Tales of dragons never seen and giant kings never named, in the end must have become absurd legends. Of course, new soul armor melodies would be created. However, at best they were victories over 10 knights, at best achievements over 100 soldiers, at best a ballad crafted against humankind. With ranks that cannot become myth or hero, they cannot withstand the new tide. Mana chain, with such mediocre techniques, you cannot reach the transcendent realm. The Count frowned, lowering his sword slightly. "Have you been drinking in the daytime? I can't understand what you've been saying." Bale Valhard. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted, the blue light around Adrien turning a violent, sickly red. He had lost something immense. A terrifying demonic shadow erupted from Adrien's back. It was a silhouette of pure malice with blazing white eyes. "If you don't know, I'll teach you." Adrien gripped the wooden sword tightly, but the shadow behind him swung an illusory blade of darkness, a thing no holy blade could sever, tearing dragon scales apart. In drinking its hot blood, a system window appeared, the true dragon-slaying ballad. The current capacity could not endure the rank of this ballad. Adrien screamed as the power tore at his unready body. A portion of the ballad was pruned. A portion of the ballad was pruned. A portion of the ballad was pruned. Warnings poured onto the screen like rain. The vast skill tree blacked out, leaving only a single small branch lit, singing only one line of the ballad. Adrien stood in a pit of red energy, blood streaming. Eyes insane. He swung his sword. A blade of black and red lightning tore the air. The Count's sword began to crack. "At this rate, I'll be devoured." The Count's eyes widened in genuine horror at the incoming strike. A cut bearing the weight of a dragon slayer. A fragile lightning flared as he poured everything he had into defense. Boom! A massive explosion engulfed the training yard, dust and masonry blasting skyward. Shockwaves shattered slabs of stone for meters around. Adrien was hurled backward by the recoil. He tumbled across the ground, his body smoking, and came to a stop. The dust settled to reveal the Count standing amid the rubble. But around him the air crackled with residues of 4 distinct, tenuous mana rings. Adrien let out a weak laugh. "Didn't you say you'd only use 1 ring?" The Count stood frozen. He looked down at his sword. It was saturated with the energy of his full power. Yet after using all 4 chain rings he possessed, he had failed to prevent his sword from being severed. Adrien thought, mana from Mind Demon magic is inferior to that from the chain rings, an undeniable fact. Adrien smiled, a bloodstained grin. "This is victory. Count Bale Valhard, you have lost." Darkness thick and suffocating. A chaotic void filled with the roars of beasts and the pungent stench of blood. Visions of razor teeth and a whirl of deep, red energy seized his mind. The memory of his sword driving through dragon flesh repeated in an endless, horrifying loop. This damned soul armor melody. "No, stop. Please stop right now." Adrien's eyes flew open, his chest heaving as he woke from the nightmare. Sweat soaked his hair and clothes, his pupils trembling as he clutched the bedsheet, trying to anchor himself back to reality. He recalled the moment he forced out the power of the ancient legend, the moment he shattered dragon scales. This was the price of forcing out the power of the soul armor melody. For the true dragon-slaying ballad is a soul armor melody of mythic level. My body was torn apart by it, but it was truly worth the risk. The first soul armor melody I wove myself. 100 victories are my pride and my strength. In 100 battles, I endured 1,000 waves. I will stand firm even against waves greater than those. A system window appeared in midair. The training ballad has leveled up slightly. Adrien smiled, his confidence fully restored. This should be enough to face that third prince bastard. Suddenly, the door burst open and Adilia rushed in, face flushed and tears streaming down her cheeks. "Your Highness, you're finally awake." It was chaos after Your Highness collapsed. I've never seen the Queen so angry before. Adrien sat on the edge of the bed, more amused than worried. Serves him right. Adilia continued, wiping her tears. Count Bale Valhard left a message, saying to inform him as soon as Your Highness woke. Adrien flopped back onto the bed. "Don't report that just yet. I'll rest a bit." His inner monologue grew dark. If I don't carefully recover the spirit damaged by overusing the soul armor melody, I will pay dearly. Reality and past memories will mix into a chaotic mess, and at some point, the boundary of reality will completely collapse. Eventually becoming mad, I would forever reenact my soul armor moments in an isolated world. I hadn't expected to be trapped in the sword's memories again after finally becoming human. Just the thought was enough to make me despair. Adilia Bayan. She was a great swordswoman. Adrien bit a piece of food, speaking casually. "Since you're a descendant of the Byron line, you should be able to inherit the soul armor melody she left behind." Adilia bowed, humble and astonished. "I didn't know my ancestor was such a great swordswoman." Adrien added, "Of course you'll need to grow far beyond your current state to possess the level suitable for that ballad. So about that, what do you want to do when you learn swordsmanship?" Adilia startled, her eyes widening. "That is, if I could truly become a knight." She clenched her fists, her face flushed with sudden determination. "If I become a knight," Adrien watched her, chewing and waiting for her resolve. "If you haven't decided, tell me later." But Adilia stepped forward, her footing steady, golden flames beginning to flare around her boots. "Your Highness's servant vows to become Your Highness's sword." Adrien stopped eating, staring at her in astonishment. Some soul armor melodies begin with the sound of war horns. Some soul armor melodies begin with the first step across the plains. There are stories of theirs that begin with a sincere oath. She closed her eyes and shouted her vow. "I will live for Your Highness all my life. I offer everything to Your Highness." A huge golden surge of energy burst from her body. A system window appeared. Adilia Byron has offered the ballad of devotion. Adrien looked at the beam of light. Is this Adelia's soul armor melody? And sometimes a soul armor melody can affect others as well. A new soul armor melody has been created. Commatery soul armor melody. Ballad of domination has been created. Adrien looked at the brilliant orb in his hand, impressed. Wow. The Ballad of Devotion is a ballad dedicated to its master. Rather than being a simple soul armor melody, It is a vow of obedience that binds souls together. Even if she has a submissive psychological trait, who would have expected a descendant of the Iron Blood Sword Marquis to weave a ballad of devotion? He clenched his fist, feeling new power flow through him. I've received unexpected assistance. He smiled, a confident and calculating look appearing in his eyes. As long as I remain the target of the ballad of devotion, Adilia's growth will also benefit me. He looked at Adilia, her face radiant with a pure smile. Thank you. Adilia stood frozen, cheeks flushed. Your Highness. She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes, the golden light fading, leaving the two of them alone in the quiet room. Adrien sat down, calculating the future, although I do not yet know which direction that benefit will take. A few days later, the palace stood tall and majestic under the deep blue sky. Inside, Adrien sat on a chair, looking contemplative and staring. The queen's voice sounded. Adrien, is your body feeling any better? Adrien looked up to see his mother standing there. I'm fine, Your Majesty. He mumbled, avoiding her gaze. He thought inwardly, dealing with those who hate this body is easier, but someone who cherishes the original owner of this body like this is rather awkward to handle. The queen looked at him with deep concern. Are you harboring resentment toward your uncle? Your uncle truly did not intend to harm you. So even if you have any bad feelings, cast them off now. Adrien answered immediately, his face void of emotion. I have no ill feelings at all. The queen was shocked, a comical expression of doubt appearing on her face. Why would you not? He treated you roughly and nagged you constantly. So saying you have no ill feelings must be a lie. Adrien insistently scratched his cheek, awkward at her reaction. No, I truly have none. His inner monologue revealed the cold truth. I struck him that day. Because all his pride and truths were denied. He must have found it very hard to endure what I planted in him that day. Mind demon magic. If he had the capacity, he would have leapt far beyond. If he couldn't overcome it, he would lose that precious martial ability. To be honest, I don't care what happens after that. The queen wiped her tears and smiled warmly. Your uncle has spent his life closer to the true sword than to people, so he could be awkward and rude. Still, lately he seems quite proud of you. He even went so far as to persuade his majesty. Thanks to him, your house arrest was lifted earlier than planned. But trouble arose as soon as the house arrest was lifted. You remember the scene at the club, ordering the nobles to be arrested. Round them all up. You think inwardly, your uncle's position must have been difficult. Is that why he acted with such disapproval? But why would that man do that for me? The scene opens in the lavish study of the prince's palace. An elderly man with a long white beard and scholar's robes, Niccolo Marchiadel, stands holding a thick stack of books, a patient yet resolute smile on his lips. Your Highness, Adrien faced him, standing with utter disgust, brows furrowed and a shadow over his eyes as he flatly refused. I absolutely refuse. Adrien flopped on the floor, flailing like a sulking child with no royal bearing. Ah, really? Why should I have to study? Adrien shouted, kicking wildly. The old scholar remained unmoved, calmly reciting a philosophical aphorism. If a person refuses to learn, how are they any different from a beast? Adrien sprang up, his face contorted in feigned outrage, as if insulted to the bone. Are you calling me an animal? Niccolo smiled softly, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. You have only just begun your studies. Your Highness, so I cannot yet call you an animal. Adrien retorted. I haven't even started. Don't play word games with me. Despite my appearance, I already know everything I need to know. I'm telling you, there's no need to learn anything more. The old scholar's expression softened into a challenge, his gaze sharp and knowing. If you insist on that, then do this. Discuss a few topics with me. If your skill truly matches your claims, I will stop coming to visit you. Your Highness. A sly, confident smile spread across Adrien's face. His blue eyes flashed with unexpected interest. Sounds good. After a moment, Adrien slammed his hand on the table and leaned forward resolutely. Yes, exactly. That is why one must always be wary of those behind them. Human nature will trample you if you are too yielding. Niccolo stroked his beard, eyes wide with surprise and admiration. You are truly correct. He pushed a particular book forward, The Theory of Iron Blood Monarchy. You will find this book very interesting to read. Here it assesses the relationship between ruler and subjects as a kind of contract or transaction. The ruler receives military and economic support in exchange for protecting the people, and the people seek protection and political stability from the ruler in exchange for their loyalty. Adrien flipped through the pages, nodding as he absorbed the information. You have a point. All relationships should be reciprocal. He pointed to a passage, fully immersed in the discussion. So this part is exact. Indeed, and here as well. The conversation flowed naturally, two minds, one young, one old, finding a rhythm of mutual intellectual respect. After a while, Nicolo rearranged his books, preparing to leave. Then, Your Highness, let us continue the rest of our discussion tomorrow. Adrien was now standing with a book in hand, waving farewell with a radiant, sincere smile, completely different from his earlier rage. Yes, certainly, I will wait. When the door slammed shut, Adrien was left alone in the fading light, a big question mark seeming to hang over him. He blinked, realizing what had just happened. Wait, was that actually a normal lesson after all? That old man really is formidable. Outside the heavy double doors, Nicolo walked down the corridor, a pensive expression on his aged face. The first prince? He is quite different from the rumors. Days passed, the sky a brilliant, cloudless blue. In the prince's bedchamber, the silence was heavy. Adrien lay on the bed, his head dangling over the edge as he stared into the room, his eyes dead and lifeless. I'm bored. He rolled restlessly. Have I been living too industriously lately? With no training, there's nothing to do. My body is still recovering too. The maid's voice cut through his languor. Your Highness, Lord Bale Valhard has come to see you. Adrien sat up, surprised. A visitor after a long time. He looked at the maid Adilia, standing anxiously at the door. What should I do? Adrien cheerfully said. Put your feet down from the bed. Yes, tell him to come in. He thought to himself. It's been a few days since the last duel, so it's about time he visited. The door opened, and Adrien rose to greet his uncle with a confident posture. But the atmosphere immediately turned heavy. Count Bale Valhard entered, his face dark and stern, guilt obvious in his expression. Adrien froze, sweat beading on his brow as he read that mood. It seemed his uncle still hadn't overcome the mind demon I planted. The count stood silent for a moment, unable to look his nephew in the eye. Finally he spoke, his voice low and heavy with remorse. I'm sorry. I broke the promise I made to myself and inflicted a grave wound upon you. For that, I have no excuse. Adrien thought. The reason I had to recuperate wasn't because of his sword chi, but because I abused the dragon-slaying ballad. Adrien felt his conscience pricked at his uncle's remorse. He told himself his uncle's position must have been difficult facing another incident caused by him. The count looked up, his gaze sincere. So tell me what you desire. If you want this arm, I'll give it. If you want these eyes, I'll give them. Adrien stepped back, flailing his hands in panic. What am I supposed to do with that scrap? He looked away with a conflicted expression. Good grief, for someone who should have been a master swordsman of the old era, he's trapped by a mind demon like this. He sighed and conceded. All right, I'll be generous then. I'll state my wish first. Uncle, take me on a trip. The count blinked, the tension dissolving instantly, a hush settling over the room. Since your house arrest has ended, can't you go out whenever you wish? Adrien waggled a finger with a mischievous smile. Not a day trip, somewhere far away, preferably outside the capital. The count stared at him, considering. The request would take time to schedule around the upcoming banquet. Going too far would be impossible. Adrien shrugged, beaming. That's fine. The count turned and left, his demeanor slightly relieved. Good. I'll contact you once the schedule is set. He watched the figures back. All right. After the count left, Adrien noticed Carl staring at him and asked, Why? What? Why are you looking at me like that? Carl smiled, scratching his cheek shyly. Just a bit surprised. I thought you'd make a far more unreasonable request. Your Highness, since the count broke his promise, this is a rare opportunity to profit in many ways. Adrien looked down, his expression unreadable for a moment. It was just that seeing that stubborn old man behave like that made me feel sorry for him. Carl's eyes widened in surprise, and he burst out laughing. Adrien snapped, noticing the guard's amusement. What? Why are you laughing? You've been looking a bit too relaxed lately. The maid gently interrupted then, holding a white envelope. Your Highness, the letter you were waiting for has arrived. The letter read, I have recently achieved a small success. It seems I will soon be able to visit you. I hope you remain well until then. From Arwin Kurgan. Adrien smiled with satisfaction. Good news at just the right time. About 5 days later, The Count sent word of good news, and 2 days after that, the departure date arrived. Sunlight flooded the stone bridge as a caravan set out. Inside the carriage, Adrien leaned out the window, watching his uncle ride alongside. "Uncle, what's the name of the domain we're visiting?" Count Bale Valhard sighed and stared ahead. "Can you really not sit still? I'll explain, so go back inside." To the Count's domain. It is the kingdom's largest weapons producer. There are iron mines on the domain supplying high quality, or in a guild of craftsmen to refine. Adrien leaned back in his seat inside the carriage, thoughtful. "At first I intended to take a decent sword from the royal armory for my use. But the king's decree rang in Karl's ears. Know that you will be severely punished if you let that brat touch another blade." Karl could only reply to him, "Please forgive me, Your Highness, since that is a royal decree. We cannot issue any weapons to you." Adrien realized, considering this man's record, that was only natural. But it meant that if he wanted a proper weapon, he'd have to acquire it outside the royal palace. His uncle was unexpectedly considerate despite his appearance. The Count grumbled without looking up, distracting. "Close the window, then." Adrien retorted childishly, "What? No way." The caravan moved along the dirt road lined with lush trees, leaves dancing in the wind. And so, the 20-day journey began. The arduous journey stretched across the map like a lifeline connecting distant lands. The expedition included a short stop at a domain 3 days' travel from the capital, then a visit to the Iron Lion Fortress 2 days beyond that, where the party would rest before returning to the capital. Inside the carriage, Adrien sat with his arms crossed, his face showing utter boredom as he stared ahead. "And right now, I'm stuck on a carriage for 3 long days without moving. The person opposite me is not interesting at all." Adilia answered only yes or no. Adrien sighed, long and drawn out, to sound like a deflating balloon. "Since there's time, I should check my mind demon magic. It's a side effect of using the authentic dragon slaying ballad. My mind demon magic is completely empty, but it's time to fill it up." The real world began to fade. The vibrations of the carriage, the chill wind slipping through the window crack. Adrien focused on gathering hidden shards of mana between the layers of reality, and the voices of the nights outside all became background noise. Adrien focused on gathering the shards of mana hidden between the layers of reality. A green energy flared around him, spiraling like a nebulous storm. "If I feel this empty mind demon magic..." Suddenly the energy core trembled violently. The mind demon magic surged in size and intensity, bathing itself in a deep cosmic blue. Adrien stood in the void of his mind, astonished as he watched. When did my mind demon magic grow this large? A system message appeared. "You have striven to accomplish a feat beyond your capacity and have briefly glimpsed a portion of that immense will." Adrien's eyes snapped open, shot clear on his face. "This is the effect of forcibly using the authentic dragon-slaying ballad. That effort has been reflected in your body. Your mind demon magic has expanded. Because your mind demon magic expanded, your physique has changed significantly. Your body can now endure more mana. You have reached the level of Chain Knight. Connection to your origin has been somewhat improved. Some restrictions on your restored abilities have been lifted. The Heavenly Eye ability has been significantly enhanced." Adrien exhaled, feeling the new power flowing within him. The maid worriedly, "Your Highness, I've taken another step forward." The carriage finally stopped beneath the domain's bright, clear sky. A splendid white villa of classical architecture stood before them, bathing in sunlight. "I cannot express the honor of meeting your Highness like this." 2 men stood at the entrance to greet them. Prince Edgar of House Allen offered his salutations. The man in gray added, "Torrance, eldest son of House Allen, greets your Highness." Adrien nodded in reply. "Thank you for your hospitality." Edgar smiled warmly. "The long journey must have exhausted you. I will show you to your chambers first." As they passed through the grand halls, Adrien glanced around. They said this was a weapons production site, and indeed the villa was filled with all kinds of arms. However, they were only low-grade pieces, flashy in appearance and useless in real combat. It looked unlikely he'd find the item he was seeking here. The group continued down the corridor. Adrien scanned the display cases with a critical, "You said the Guild of Smiths is located on this domain?" Edgar turned back in surprise. "Indeed." But Adrien halted, his eyes bright with determination. "I want to go take a look around." They stepped outside. Edgar added, "Blacksmiths, by nature, are coarse and stubborn people. When they're in the flow of work, they often ignore visitors, even their lord, and the words they speak are as cold and rough as the iron they handle. So, even if you are offended by them, please regard it as their craftsmanship spirit and be magnanimous. Adrien listened, but his attention was drawn to something else, a blazing light emanating nearby. The heat from the forge was intense, warping the very air. The heat from the forge is strong. If you feel uncomfortable, please speak up. Inside the smithy, chaos reigned. Dozens of smiths hammered, sparks flying everywhere. Adrien stood amidst the noise and heat, the flames dancing in his eyes. Edgar approached Adrien anxiously. "Your Highness." They moved with frantic energy, completely ignoring the royal retinue entering their domain. But Adrien ignored him, stepping deeper into the smithy as the flames crackled. An old man with white hair and beard, muscles glistening with sweat, brought a giant hammer down on a glowing block of steel. Adrien watched him intently. Among them was a particularly clear, ringing sound. Adrien stood stunned by that rhythm. This is," Adrien whispered, staring at the red-hot blade on the anvil. "Here it is. The first memory I remember." Adrien stared motionless, sweat pouring down his face from the heat and the intensity of that memory. A scrap of cloth gently brushed his cheek. He blinked out of the trance. Adilia unexpectedly wiped the sweat from his face, speaking softly and looking at him with concern. "Your Highness, you are sweating a lot." Adrien exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He glanced back at the forge, his gaze resting on the work in progress. The noise of the smithy returned to the center. The workers finally seemed to notice the guests, but the atmosphere was tense. A man in a blue cap with a mustache stepped forward. "These lowly folk present their greetings to your Highness." Edgar introduced him. "This is Jackson. He's in charge of this Smith's Guild." Adrien gave a curt nod. "I understand." Seeing the silver-haired old man still focused on forging, Jackson erupted in anger. "What are you doing? Stop immediately and bow to his Highness." Before he could finish the rebuke, a hand clamped over his mouth. Jackson's eyes bulged in terror as he saw Adrien gripping his face, his eyes blazing with a threatening golden light, while he whispered coldly, "You overstep." Jackson trembled and fell silent at once. Adrien released him and looked around the workshop. The other smiths looked exhausted, gaunt-faced with eyes full of fear and fatigue. It was clear they'd been dragged here against their will while working, forced to do a job I hadn't even ordered. He turned to the workers, voice authoritative. "The iron will cool. Unless you intend to let the forge die out as well, stop standing there." The smith shouted, "What are you doing? Pick up your tools." Another called, "Step onto the stand." The forge sprang back to life. But amid the chaos, Adrien stood still, arms crossed, watching the flames. The old man was absorbed in his craft, ignoring all the commotion. Adrien stepped closer to the anvil, his heart beating in time with the heavy hammer blows. The fire roared higher, bathing him in bright orange light. "Just," Adrien murmured, sweat dripping from his chin, his eyes wide and trembling. Before a jumble of emotions, mixed between astonishment and a recognition of familiarity. The old man's hands still moved deftly. What kind of uncanny feeling is this? Amber-hued sunset light draped the domain's splendid white buildings, creating a warm, yet melancholic scene as Adrien walked with Edgar. For some reason, over the past 6 months he had repeated the process of forging a sword and then melting it down again and again. Adrien listened intently, eyes still fixed ahead as he posed the apt question. "Are they failed products?" Edgar shook his head slowly, seeming unable to comprehend the artisan's standards. "It's hard to say. Every sword he makes is considered a masterpiece, which is why he's called a master swordsmith. Even the swords he's produced so far seem to me to be completely without flaw. It's a mystery that he melts them all down. Moreover, over the past month, he has barely slept, clinging to his work. He's not young anymore. Our worry is not without reason." Time slipped by. Several days passed since then. Inside the furnace's searing heat, sparks flew like fireflies in the dark. The rhythmic thud of hammer on steel echoed through the vast room. The prince visited the forge from dawn and left late at night, like a silent sentry witnessing the birth of a weapon. Contrary to the tension caused by rumors of the first prince's impending arrival, surprisingly no incidents occurred. The old man simply continued his work, and the prince simply stood and watched. No incidents occurred, and finally, the day the prince had to depart arrived. The moon hung high in the night sky, as the last hammer blows rang out. Inside the smithy, Adrien stood looking down at the anvil with a heavy heart. He sighed softly. I had hoped to see it completed before leaving. Edgar looked at the prince, sensing the genuine disappointment in his voice. He truly regrets it. Adrien ordered gently, accepting the planned schedule. Let's go. Carl nodded. I understand there is a farewell banquet tonight, and we must depart early tomorrow morning. Perhaps for that reason Edgar also hoped the prince could witness the master smith complete the sword. For a moment, just as Adrien placed his hand on the carriage door to leave, Your Highness. Adrien paused, looking back. Edgar was running toward him, breathless and alarmed. He shouted excitedly. It seems the master smith has finished the sword. Adrien's eyes widened. He turned to look toward the balcony, over the estate. There, bathed in the exquisite colors of the sunset, stood the master smith. He, bare-chested, held a long silver blade that caught the dying light, causing it to emit a surreal, radiant halo. The old man panted heavily, chest heaving, but his hands remained steady as he wiped the blade with a cloth. The sword was magnificent. It gave off a cold, pure light, a testament to a lifetime of skill. The master smith knelt on one knee, bowing respectfully. He offered the sword with both hands, dedicating his life's devotion to the young man before him. I present this sword to your highness. Adrien stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the weapon. He reached out, his fingers touching the cold steel of the sword's guard. Heat it like the sun rising on the horizon, and cool it until its hue matches the king's red cloak. If you do so, a sword like the sun and a king will be born. Adrien smiled and asked, Does it have a name? The old man replied, Call it Twilight. Adrien stared at the gleaming blade, then back at the old man. Is that the dusk of dawn or the dusk of darkness? The master smith chuckled softly. To me it's darkness, but to your highness it must be dawn. Adrien laughed, a clear, sincere sound. You speak surprisingly eloquently for a blacksmith. The old man's smile suddenly faded, his gaze beginning to lose focus. That is, the master smith collapsed forward. Adrien moved immediately, catching the old man before he hit the ground. Adrien held the frail frame. Carl stammered. Your highness, Adrien issued an order, his tone brooking no argument. Notify his family. I think I'll stay here tonight. As night deepened, the moon cast a pale light over the estate. Inside, the only light came from moonlight slanting through the window. Adrien sat on a wooden chair beside the bed where the old man lay. The master smith breathed labored breaths. The moment your highness stood behind me that day, the sword took shape as if by fate. The sword itself decided the day it would be born. He replied, Is that what you think? The truth is, he leaned in close, speaking a line that made the old man's eyes widen as he recognized something. He stared at the young prince, seeing something that reached beyond the flesh. My God, then you are. Adrien calmly met his gaze. Yes. I understand now. Now I see. How could I not understand the heart of this comrade? He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his remaining strength. Your highness, please lend me that sword for a moment. Adrien stood and took the sword. Here it is. He placed the sword's hilt into the old man's trembling hands. The master smith gripped it one last time, feeling the familiar coldness of the creation of his own hands. Please, may this sword. The old man looked at Adrien with eyes full of hope and premonition. Become as great as your own person. Adrien placed his hand over the smith's, gentle but resolute. It surely will. The master smith smiled in satisfaction and released his grip. The hold slackened. His hand fell away from his sword. Adrien watched him. The chest that had risen with the rhythm of the forge's beating was now still. He was gone. Adrien sat alone in the quiet room. Moonlight lit the peaceful face of the artisan who had given everything for his final masterpiece. The next morning the sun shone brightly. Birds chirped in the trees. Outside the estate, Edgar stood smiling broadly, presenting a long, ornate box to Adrien. Inside lay a sword inlaid with jewels and intricate gold filigree. Of course, while one cannot simply put a price on a sword forged with the smith's soul, I believe it may be impractical for your highness to wield it. By chance I acquired this magic sword to offer to your highness, so please accept this instead. Adrien held the master smith's sword, plain, undecorated but deadly. He drew it out and inspected the blade. It was excellent. He thought to himself, even if it's not top tier, it's a fine mid-level sword. Edgar added, Your highness, so that sword then? Adrien sheathed the sword with a satisfying click, smiling at Edgar. A single sword forged by a renowned master poured with his soul is a great gift already, and yet you even thought to offer a magic sword besides. Indeed, the Allen family's loyalty to the crown is remarkable. Edgar wept in despair. I meant to use that flashy magic sword as bait to reclaim the master smith's blade, but instead I just handed over an excellent sword with nothing to show for it. They departed in haste. A commander shouted, "Carriages and infantry will follow at a slow pace. The cavalry will ride ahead at full speed. We've already fallen behind schedule, so hurry and keep formation." The knights roared, "Yes." Adrien stood beside a horse, looking at the count. "You seem busy. Now that you mention it, I didn't see you around at all while we were on this estate." The count sighed. "His Majesty assigned me a separate task. Now that you mention it, I didn't see you around at all while we were on this estate." The count sighed. "His Majesty assigned me a separate task." The count continued, "That's right. So I'm preparing to leave as well. We intend to ride fast to reach the Iron Line Fortress tonight, so I'll be riding." Adrien froze. About that, I don't know how to ride a horse." The count looked down, embarrassed. Adrien stared at the horse, sweat beading on his brow as he delivered the decisive statement of his existence. "I am a sword by nature. How could I possibly know how to ride a horse?" The journey to the Iron Lion Castle was chaotic. Adrien vomited a rainbow from motion sickness. These were a series of humiliations for a prince and used to sitting astride a horse. While Adilia watched in panic, there were several winding turns along the road. But instead of the half-day they had originally planned, they arrived after a full day. Before them stood a massive stone fortress. Its towers reached to the sky. "So this is the Iron Lion Castle." The clatter of armored footsteps rang out in steady rhythm on the stone. Rows of knights stood solemnly. A brown-haired man stepped forward, placed his hand on his chest in formal salute. "York of House Wolratenga greets the first prince." Behind him the troops thundered in unison. "The Iron Lion greets the noble blood of Leon Burke." Adrien smiled confidently despite the surrounding fanfare, thinking, "Your spirits are a bit overly enthusiastic. And the reason is obvious. Stirring things up a bit, are we?" Arwin stepped out of the ranks, expression cold and composed. He called her name. "Arwin." Arwin Kurgan bowed deeply, her long black hair falling over her shoulders as she said respectfully, "Your Highness, I have counted the days waiting just to see Your Highness again." The reaction was immediate and volatile. Flames of jealousy and anger flared among the male knights. Their faces contorted with rage as they glared at the prince who had taken their idol. Adrien watched their fury with satisfaction. Oh, quick to react indeed. Suddenly the temperature dropped. A terrible purple aura erupted from the maid behind him, her eyes glowing threateningly gold, her face consumed by pure wrath. Adrien flinched, sweating as he realized the danger. "Ah, there's hostility aimed at me." He grabbed her shoulder. "Adilia." Adilia snapped out of her trance. Her eyes returned to their soft green, though she still looked bewildered. In a blink, "Yes, Your Highness." Adrien breathed inwardly, both relieved and cautious. Fortunately, I trained her subservient mindset early on. Adrien turned back to the crowd, a sharp, challenging smile. He ordered his knights. "And now, Arwin, come with me. We have plenty to sort out, don't we?" He looked back with a mocking smirk. "Their pride would be better displayed if the men behind you came along as well." The scene shifted to the castle training yard. Adrien stood alone in the center, holding a wooden practice sword, surrounded by the Iron Lion Knights. He looked around, his voice echoing. "Who will show me the sword of the Iron Lion?" Adrien looked at them with bored disdain. "If my rank makes you uneasy, I invoke the name of Leon Burke to ensure no one will be held accountable for the outcome of this spar." Still no one moved. Adrien's smile turned sarcastic. "No takers." He sighed and hurled a severe insult. "The famed Iron Lion troop is so cowardly. Seems the title of the kingdom's finest is just an empty name." That struck their pride. A knight with wavy orange hair and a haughty gaze stepped forward, clutching a wooden sword. "I am Denant of House Dueling, though I am too unworthy to represent the Iron Lion's blade. If Your Highness permits, I dare to stand before Your Highness." Adrien took a relaxed stance, the wooden sword loosely held, waving his other hand. "No need to ask permission. I called for volunteers first." Denant charged at once, the ground cracking under his feet. "Then be careful." He swung his sword. Brilliant blue mana exploded outward. Adrien watched the strike calmly, eyes narrowing. Blue sparks detonated as the two blades met. But in the chaos, Dinant parried, and the protagonist's force was so overwhelming that blood spurted from him as Adrien knocked him down. Dinant was flung backward, rolling across the grass. Adrien stood amid the dust, looking at the fallen knight with no interest. Next, the audience gasped. Another knight charged. I'm Pulrothium. Dinant is only a first year, but I'm in my third year. Smack! He too was sent flying by a single slash. More knights rushed at him. I'm Hallie, a fifth-year squire. A cough. Hallie was flung into the air. Judith, 8th year. Another knight fell. The Iron Lion's blade never loses. Before long, the training ground was lined with groaning knights. Adrien stood in the middle of the battlefield, looking completely unscathed, observing the defeated. He sighed and looked at the knights, still hesitating at the edge. Good heavens, now I want to fight an official knight, and you move too slowly. He turned to Arwin. Arwin. She stepped forward dutifully. Yes, your highness. Adrien smiled at her. When I return, you will come with me. Arwin froze, a brief look of confusion crossing her face before she bowed. At your command, your highness. That remark seemed to anger another knight, who interrupted them with a challenging voice. Your highness. Adrien turned to see a tall knight, with long silver blonde hair and a haughty expression approaching. He wore the heavy armor of an official knight. Adrien smirked. Too easy. The knight halted. I've heard your highness likes to bet. How about a little wager to liven things up? If I defeat your highness. Adrien cut him off and refused immediately. Arwin is not a prize of the tournament. He looked at the arrogant knight. Why not bet something else? Bring your sword. Adrien gripped the hilt, pulling back part of the blade to reveal the glowing blue gem set in the pommel. If you win, I'll give you this sword right here. Arwin's eyes widened in shock. The arrogant knight squinted as he recognized the weapon. Arwin grabbed Adrien's arm, panicked. Your highness, it should be the deity who, he replied at once. You are worth this sword 100, 1,000 times over. He thought to himself. The worth of a swordsman cannot be compared to a mere sword. She looked at him pleadingly, but, seeing his resolve, she let go. The silver-haired knight smiled in satisfaction. I understand, your highness. Dunham of the Fahrenheit clan. I am an official knight of the Iron Lion Company, and on the verge of reaching 3rd rank. Adrien looked at him with a bored face. So you're still only 2nd rank? A vein bulged on Dunham's forehead as he raised his weapon proudly. This sword is the 17th made by a smith known as the Master Bladesmith. If you win, this sword will belong to your highness. Adrien smiled with amusement. Oh, what a coincidence. It's called Twilight, and it so happens that I also obtained a sword from that Master Bladesmith. This is the Master's 100th work. Dunham looked skeptical, sweat beading on his brow. I've never heard a rumor that the Master made a 100th sword. Adrien replied calmly. I suppose not. This is his final work. It was finished just a few days ago. Dunham's eyes narrowed, faint blue sparks beginning to crackle around his blade. Very well, fine. Though your highness walks a mistaken path in swordsmanship, I can acknowledge the tireless effort hidden in that path. To show a bit of respect for that, I will give my all in this sparring match. Adrien stood calmly as blue flames began to flare around his chest. A mistaken path. He closed his eyes and shook his head. How small. This position was never mine to begin with. Respect for me, as long as it comes from my people, is enough. Adilia, watch closely. Adilia gasped, yes. A massive burst of blue mana erupted from Adrien. It spun violently, forming the towering spectral silhouette of a knight behind him. The radiance was overwhelmingly dominant, dimming even the castle towers behind them. This is the path you must walk from now on. Adilia stared, mesmerized by the true display of power. Yes. Golden energy swirled around her as she envisioned herself following that blue light. I will do so, your highness. Elsewhere, in the sunlit drawing room, the Count broke the silence with a pensive question. So, how many times have we visited the Iron Lion Castle now? Seated opposite him in a luxurious green velvet armchair, Count Wooladin held his teacup, his expression obscured by the steam as he answered decisively. This is the 4th time. The 3rd prince and the 5th prince have visited while the 1st prince was under house arrest. No matter how poor his reputation, it cannot be denied that the 1st prince is the kingdom's lawful heir. If things have come to this, you must bear a large part of the responsibility. If you, the commander of the 3rd Legion, had supported the first prince even a little, his highness would not have become so isolated. So why only now do you act as his protector? The count lowered his gaze, thinking, I am not wrong. I certainly once abandoned my nephew. A man not only an inept ruler, but also a tyrant. That man is my nephew. One day, when I scolded him for being intoxicated by a strange poison, are you still sane? He lunged at his own uncle with a sword. A hopeless wretch. When I returned north in utter despair, he sent me poisoned wine, brazenly calling it a gift accompanied by a letter. But the count still drank the poison. Blue sparks crackled around his body as he purified the toxin. When I used mana to burn that cheap poison, I unknowingly burned away the little remaining familial affection along with it. However, that brat, whom I thought would never change, has become different. He endures harsh training and grows stronger by the day. Count Wallen looked at him, bewildered by this defense. Didn't you yourself say the first prince must never become king? He thought. The boy now is a completely different person from before, then stared directly into the eyes of Count Bale Valhard, pleading with a rare weakness. Give him a chance, at least so he can stand on equal footing with the other princes. I beg you. Count Wooladin looked at him, completely confused by the proud commander's bow. I really don't understand. I don't know whether it is you or the first prince who has changed. First, lift your head, a man known as the Silver Fist. Suddenly the double doors burst open. A knight stood there, panicked, arms spread wide. Lord Count Wooladin. Both counts turned to face the messenger. The first prince is outside, under the brilliant blue sky of the castle courtyard. Bale Valhard and York strode quickly along the stone path, tried to reassure himself. No need to worry too much. Dunham knows his limits, so nothing serious will happen. Even in a real duel, he certainly wouldn't beat the prince to unconsciousness. Bale Valhard walked with a wry smile, hands clasped behind his back. The one you should worry about right now isn't the prince. It's your knight. York looked at his friend as if he had lost his mind. You really have become strange. You look pale, and now you're saying nonsense. Suddenly, loud crashing sounds echoed from the inner yard, and everyone froze as a silhouette flew through the air. The knight slammed hard onto the ground, sliding across the dirt. That's your knight. Gor gasped. Dunham, at the center of the training ground, surrounded by a crowd of shouting knights. Wow, His Highness wins again. Even Dunham was defeated. The soldiers yelled in astonishment. York stared at the scene before him. What is this? Bale Valhard folded his arms in satisfaction. Didn't I tell you? Adrien wiped the blood from his lip, his eyes blazing with fierce intensity. He is not the one you need to worry about. Adrien shouted down at the remaining challengers. His body was wreathed in a mysterious blue flame. Continue. A few minutes ago, my uncle always said, a true knight begins at the second ring. Adrien panted, sweat dripping from his face as the blue flames flickered around his chest. Those words were no exaggeration. The training motif he was using now was insufficient, he realized, looking at his trembling hand. But he couldn't bring out the true dragon-slaying motif to deal with an ordinary knight. In that case, Adrien narrowed his eyes, and the trait of hyperfocus activated. The world fell silent. All sound vanished, and the charging knight moved as if in slow frames. He gripped the hilt tightly. His body no longer felt like his own. His left eye burned with a piercing blue flame, the exact sensation from that time. The knight swung his sword down, and Adrien launched a counterattack at the same instant. Boom! Blue energy exploded outward on impact. Adrien's strike was heavy and decisive. The knight was blown back by the raw force of mana. A wild smile spread across his face as steam rose from his body. Continue, he roared again. The crowd of knights went wild, shouting in astonishment at his power. The knight rose once more. Adrien faced him head-on. Their swords locked in a shower of sparks against the towering castle backdrop. Adrien spun, trailing blue flames as he struck. He smiled faintly, savoring the thrill of battle. The knight defended desperately, and then more knights rushed in. Adrien became a whirlwind of blue light, slashing left and right, his sword an extension of his will. The blade tipped toward the ground. The sun was setting, casting an orange-gold shadow across the training field. Adrien stood alone in the center, panting heavily, surrounded by the defeated knights. He looked down at his sword, sweat dripping from his chin in drops. The spectators cheered loudly, their faces alight with excitement and reverence. Pawn has been defeated. That is His Highness's 5th consecutive victory. Deep within Adrien, a transformation occurred. A silhouette of light standing amid a storm of blue energy. Having endured thousands of waves and hundreds of battles, I will stand firm even before an even greater wave. Ding! A system window appeared. The training ode has gained a new stanza. Only now do I rise to take up the sword. The level of the training ode has become extraordinary. The training ode adapts itself to match its new level. The training ode has become a duel ode. Adrien whispered, vision blurring. I did it. His legs gave way. He collapsed forward, but a pair of strong hands caught him before he hit the ground. Are you all right, Your Highness? We offer our deepest respect for the victory you have achieved. Around them, the other knights, faces human and admiring under the sunset. Honor the first prince's sword. One shouted. Honor his fighting spirit. Another called. We offer our respects for your victory. Adrien blinked, bewildered by this sudden admiration. What is this? A moment ago, they were eager to tear me apart. Observing the scene from the sidelines, his expression softened. They are simple men. A sword and victory are the greatest excitements for them. Looking at your face, you must have thought you would incur their wrath. The Count continued. A glorious defeat is worth more than a dishonorable victory. When both sides have fought with everything they have, does winning still matter? Another knight chimed in. Still, Dunham might be a bit resentful. The red-haired knight swore. Yes, because he had to give up the sword he boasted about so much to Your Highness. Another knight laughed loudly. Refreshing. He was far too arrogant about that sword. Adrien sat on the ground, listening to their laughter. He gave a small laugh and looked down. I thought everything I knew had been forgotten and cast away with the mana artifact. But it seems at least one thing remains unchanged. A calmness in defeat and worship of the strong, the spirit of the knights. Brilliant sunlight cast long shadows across the stone yard of the Iron Lion Castle. As the horses neighed eagerly before departure, the carriages were ready while the knights busied themselves with final preparations. Adrien stood before the gathered crowd, a light breeze ruffling his cloak as he offered a warm smile of farewell. Then until next time, Count George Wooladin bowed deeply with sincere respect. I pray for your health until then. Adrien nodded. You take care as well, Count? Yes, Count Wooladin. Please keep secret what occurred while I was here. A question mark seemed to hover over Count George Wooladin as he blinked in confusion, unable to understand the modest request. Wouldn't making this known benefit Your Highness? Adrien answered only with a roguish, fierce smile, curling one corner of his mouth. There is someone I want to tease a little. The journey home was long. The convoy stopped in a clearing surrounded by forest. The knight announced, his voice echoing through the trees. We will camp here tonight. I will scout around for a bit. Adrien nodded. Go ahead. He turned his back to her and thought, well, Arwin will adapt soon enough. He muttered as he watched the camp activities. Fatigue washed over him. He stretched his arms wide. I should get inside and rest. Inside the tent, an aura of cleanliness and service greeted him. Adilia stood there, having changed back in her maid uniform, radiant with an inexplicable brightness. Your Highness, you have returned. Adrien stared at her in astonishment, his mind reeling at the absurdity of the scene. The person I recruited was supposed to be an S-rank sword prodigy, yet she's doing tasks fit only for a maid. Adilia noticed his hesitation and tilted her head, worry on her face. Your Highness, is something troubling you? Adrien flopped onto the bed, waving the thought away. No, never mind. You may step back. Adilia bowed and withdrew with an adorably worried pout. Yes. Your Highness was left alone in the quiet of the tent. Adrien looked up at the ceiling, his mind drifting to the events at the castle. The Iron Lion Knights are very different from what I thought. He recalled the status bars he saw floating above the knights during training. Swordsmanship B, Swordsmanship C. When I used the power of judgment, most official knights did not possess sword skill above rank B. In the past, these were people who could barely reach mid-level swordsmen. Even after a lifetime of hard training, ordinary people would vanish in vain. Yet such people have reached a level equivalent to a swordsman at only 20 or 30 years old. The innate qualities heroes once possessed have declined to an incomparable degree, while the potential of ordinary people has risen significantly. That is because of mana chains. He was someone who could have aimed for transcendence in the past. That is why I am displeased he threw that ability away. However, This era is an age in which there is not even an opportunity to build achievements far beyond the extraordinary level. In the end, everything is due to the flow of time. I must admit that I do not fully understand this era, so I will begin learning from scratch. Suddenly, applause interrupted his meditation, and a voice rang out. That is a good mindset. Adrien looked up, startled. Count Bale Valhard stood at the tent entrance, clapping with a rare look of approval. It is not too late. If you put in effort from now on, you can achieve your dream. Adrien blinked. What dream? The Count spread his arms, completely misunderstanding. Haven't you already won the hearts of the Iron Lion Knights? Other princes could not blend with those men so naturally. That is a very wise judgment. Adrien stared at him, his face twisted in a mix of horror and confusion. What? What's wrong with this man? He yelled. Are you crazy? The Count looked puzzled. Do you not remember the terms of the bet I made with you? He answered immediately. If it's the bet about defeating the third prince, that still stands. The Count cut him off decisively. No, our wager was to defeat a two-chain knight. Adrien defeated Dunham with his wooden sword. He thought to himself, then I have effectively won that bet already. He stepped forward, his voice resonant. I will do as I promised then. As a Count of the kingdom and commander of the Northern Army, I will officially support the first prince of the kingdom, Adrien Leon Burke. Adrien looked dazed, thinking, what is he saying? Officially support? Don't tell me. The Count simply thumbs his nose toward the tiny tent below. Trust me. Adrien bristled inwardly. When did I say I want to be king? Then it faded into the image of the royal capital, gleaming white beneath a brilliant blue sky. The Count's declaration became a literal bomb. Voices rose from every corner. Congratulations, Your Highness. Inside the palace halls, knights and maids beamed. We sincerely congratulate you. This is truly a joy for the kingdom. Royal knights and newly appointed soldiers created an uproar, and the attendants and new servants sent from the palace were equally busy. And I suddenly found myself at the center of it all. He waved his hand. My goodness, this is chaos. Send them all away at once. The knight standing silently beside him shook his head. They come by royal decree. Even if I order them to leave, they will not obey. Adrien added, then at least clear them from my sight. This is driving me mad. After that insinuating glance of his, the maid nodded in understanding, then slipped into the high-ceiling library. He sat on a soft velvet chair, sighed as sunlight poured through the tall windows. Finally, quiet. Much better. Bang! The double doors were thrown open roughly. Brother, are you in there? Adrien looked at him. Why are you here at this hour? Julian, hands on his hips. You play the fool well. Secretly learning swordsmanship from Count Bale Valhard, and even revealing such grand ambitions. Adrien stared at him dazed. Who learned what from whom? Julian clenched his fist. I really intended at least to save your face. How could you do this? I meant for him to lose without too much shame. He replied sarcastically. Amazing. I'm so moved I could cry. He pointed an accusing finger at Adrien, eyes burning with hostility. You made a very big mistake. I intend to make you pay dearly for deceiving me. Adrien folded his arms, face dark with disappointment, thinking, this one, that one. I've already said I'm not interested in the throne. I need to find the mastermind behind this. The scene returned to the private quiet of the tent, continuing the conversation with the Count. So then, sir, I will keep up the act for a while. So please withdraw at an appropriate time, because I have no interest in things like the throne. Why did you start all this without consulting me? He paused, then posed a sharp question. Are you worried about the Ban H? Ban H is the shield that protects the kingdom from the monsters of the northern mountain range. The Count smiled confidently. So long as the crown and the nobility do not forget the harshness of winter, nothing ill will befall the Ban H family. Adrien looked at him skeptically but felt relieved. If that's the case, that's a relief. The Count added, it's only a matter of time. In any case, it will inevitably happen. Do you truly not know the fate of a firstborn who does not inherit the throne? The situation will not change just because you keep bowing your head. If you need time to accept the situation, I will give you as much as you like. However, bear this in mind. The legitimacy of the firstborn does not disappear unless you die. Alone in the tent, Adrien sat in the dim light. I told you, no matter how much time you give me, I will not change. What I truly need to seek is the authority and power that once touched my transcendent realm. So I would never want something as mundane as the right to succeed to the throne. I'm certain of that. Scene shifts to a later time. The grand doors of the banquet hall are thrown open. The room is filled with guests in lavish gowns and suits. The floor is adorned with intricate gold patterns. A herald announced, his voice echoing through the crowd, of pure Leonberg bloodline, the firstborn of the royal house of Leonberg. His Highness, First Prince Adrien Leonberg, is entering. Adrien entered the hall wearing regal attire, a high-collar black coat with deep red accents and gold cords. The crowd parted to make way for him. Their faces were a blend of curiosity, fear, and judgment, at least until the banquet began. Adrien strode forward, his gaze piercing the murmuring crowd below. The nobles, resplendent in velvet and silk, could not take their eyes off the prince who had been completely transformed. A woman gasped, whispering, "Unbelievable! This majestic bearing is exactly like the king in his youth." Adrien descended the final steps with an expressionless face. He thought, are they making such a fuss just because I lost a little weight? Are these the kingdom's nobles? What a joke. Status displays revealed their true nature, the heart of the serpent trait. Twisted purple-black serpents coiled around the nobles, their scales glittering with malice. It was the mark of accumulated dark karma from those who plunder others and trample lives, as if all of them carried such filth within. The only one worth watching was. Adrien recognized him immediately. "If you have come, you should at least pay your respects." He replied at once, "Oh, your highness, I apologize. I must thank you for the invitation." He observed and thought, the only one who, though lacking strength, has not been corrupted. Yes, this will do. Containers to hold the seeds I will sow from now on. A crisp shout from the guards cut through the whispers, drawing attention and silencing the entire hall. The massive double doors open, officially recognized by the Emperor of the Bone Empire, the Marquis Montpellier of Bourgogne. Adrien turned as a short, portly man in a garish hat and purple cloak swaggered in, followed by guards. Ambassador Couen Bourgogne is entering. That name hit Adrien like a direct blow. What? The man stopped in front of Adrien, a slick, smug smile spreading across his face. "Long time no see, Prince." Adrien looked at the man. The name Bourgogne echoed in his mind, triggering a violent, crimson flashback. The mortal enemy he and his comrades had fought against for a long time 4 years ago. A name that had left countless scars on this country. How dare he stand before me? Suddenly, red wine arced through the air, splashing across the prince's face and his expensive ceremonial attire. Adrien froze. Marquis Bielefeld, an elderly noble with a gray beard, hurried forward in horror. "Prince, are you all right?" "Because I was too eager to greet the prince, I apologize, your highness." His expression darkened. The entire banquet hall held its breath. Adrien snapped back to reality. "I will need to change my clothes." Bielefeld bowed deeply, sweating profusely. "This old body disobeyed me, and I have committed a grave disrespect." A knight stepped closer to Adrien. "Your highness, I will escort you." Adrien looked at the elderly marquis who had taken the blame. "Who is he?" The knight answered, "That is his lordship, Marquis Bielefeld." Adrien watched the elderly man bow respectfully. "Bielefeld. I suppose not all of them have rotted away. Well, that cooled my head down a bit, did it not?" A moment later, as Adrien was wiping his face, the count opened the door and stepped in. "I heard there was an incident. Marquis Bielefeld says you looked like you were about to cause some trouble." It seems he was not entirely speaking nonsense. "What on earth do you intend to do?" Adrien replied, his voice firm. "I am not that reckless. I simply cannot understand. The Bourgogne family brutally flaunts its power in the heart of the kingdom, and the nobles give him a sincere respect they don't even afford the crown. There is an atmosphere too tense to be called peace, and a relationship too one-sided to be called an alliance." Adrien asked, clenching his fist. "Exactly when did the country fall into this state?" The count looked away, weary. "It's not a particularly extraordinary history. In the past, the kingdom stood firm against countless invasions by the empire. Exceptional knights stepped forward to repel the invaders. However, as time passed, the empire grew stronger and the gap widened. A panoramic view showed the empire's vast, sprawling capital compared to the smaller kingdom. Before an empire that had become a superpower, The kingdom ultimately had no choice but to kneel. Adrien's eyes widened as he realized something. Don't tell me. It's because of that? A map appeared showing Leonberg's small territory completely overwhelmed by the vast Bourgogne Empire. Though a small borderland nation, the kingdom still possessed something that allowed them to stand against the mighty empire. From a nation's founding, achievements had been accumulated without blemish. There are ordinary things and extraordinary things. Hero tales, legends, even myths. The martial soul him. We have lost all of those things. He looked up at the Count, his face hardening with resolve. Uncle, I've changed my mind. The Count asked again, what do you mean? He replied confidently and clearly. I will try being king. The Count's eyes widened in shock. Adrien thought inwardly. I may regret this decision, but it is something I must do. After all, I have helped build half of this country. On the second day of the feast, bright sunlight shone down on the white stone palace. A voice echoed. The first prince of the royal house of Leon Burke, Adrien Leon Burke, is entering. Adrien entered the hall, adjusted his coat, his face radiating supreme confidence. Walking beside him was his uncle, Count Bale Valhard of the North. Adrien glanced to the side. The nobles bowed, but they all avoided his gaze. This was a ceremony performed with excessive hesitation, even worse than how one treats a foreign noble. His mind drifted back 400 years. In the past, when my comrade stood before the people, no one ever thought he would become king, because he was merely a rural boy who had run out from some remote village. Even among those who had been stripped of everything and driven away, he had nothing notably outstanding. Yet the boy still stepped forward before the people, just like me right now. Those who have eyes but do not see. Before a display of sheep, I stand tall. A notification kept appearing. The king's song. I sing the monarch's hymn. My current power cannot handle the song's level. Part of the song is skipped. Part of the song is skipped. Part of the song is skipped. Using just one line of the song equals 1/4. Adrien gritted his teeth, feeling the tension. Compared to a true dragon-slaying piece, this was still bearable. No song fit the current situation better than this one. This is enough. However, a blue flame coalesced above his head, forming a beautifully eerie crown. Adrien, his blue mana cloak billowing behind him, wore the crown shining above his head. The nobles stared, stunned into silence. A wave of blue mana swept over them. Even the corrupted nobles looked on with reverence. He turned to the crowd, a majestic smile on his face. You may lift your heads. Suddenly, a streak of dark purple energy sliced across the air. Adrien froze. This source of energy, a gasp. A hood was lowered. A voice rang out. Surprising to think anyone still remembers the hymns. Adrien went pale. No, that woman is. Why is that bitch here? An illusionary world appeared with brilliant, pure sunlight filtering through the lush canopy of an ancient forest. The most beautiful creatures God had ever formed, a benevolent race that would never harm the smallest life. Gardeners of the green woods with lifespans of 300 to 1,000 years. That is all people typically think when they say the word elf. But in reality, they're a brutal race, using their beauty as bait to destroy their foes. The high elves, born with heroic ranks from the cradle, are the most dangerous among them. Within the vast, hazy hall, Adrien faced the very embodiment of that danger. He stared at the silver-haired elf woman in a luxurious purple cloak, his mind racing with anxious thoughts. Moreover, she was not even a mere high elf. Having lived for nearly a millennium, she was a grand high elf. Her name was Sigran, demon sword martialist. She had been a member of the expeditionary force that slaughtered the frenzied dragon 400 years ago. A horrific memory from 4 centuries ago suddenly crashed into Adrien's mind. She, crazed and bloodied, reached for a magnificent sword with a maniacal smile. That was Adrien's past life. She asked in a twisted, obsessive tone, "If your master dies, will you come with me? I will ensure you never know boredom for the rest of your life. What if you are merely a sword? I desire you more than ever, precisely because you are a sword." Back in the present, Adrien looked at her, cold sweat beginning to pour down his face. And she was the madwoman who had tormented him so horribly. She probably doesn't recognize me, does she? Even though I just recited the king's hymn, which she knows well. Her face came close to his, curiosity written across it as she asked, "Have we met before? How strange. Why does your highness feel so familiar to me?" Adrien forced a stiff posture to hide his panic and replied, This is the first time I've seen an elf with my own eyes. She asked again, really? Adrien answered without a hint of hesitation. Really? Sigran tapped her long, slender finger lightly on her chin, eyes narrowing. Adrien held a polite smile, but pressed his lips tight. Inside him was utter terror. He swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of the situation, and thought, liar. Even 400 years ago, Sigran was one of the strongest I'd ever met in my life as a sword. Who knows what kind of monster she's become now? Sigran broke the silence with a smooth, calculating voice. When a human sees them for the first time, they usually have one of two reactions. The vast majority are enchanted, but those who have reached a high realm in martial cultivation feel uneasy. However, from what I see, it seems your highness has not yet reached that level. Adrien reacted quickly but calmly. My tastes are just a little unusual. Sigran fell silent. Her eyes locked onto his, as if searching for a crack in that mask. After a tense standoff, Sigran pulled the hood of her purple cloak over her silver hair. She turned and left, leaving a parting remark. Brief as it was an honor to meet you. She walked down the brightly lit corridor. Adrien watched her retreating figure, his face drained pale, cold sweat pouring down. He exhaled a long breath, as if a 1,000-pound burden had been lifted. For now, I have survived. A while later, the miserable lineup of candidates the Queen had gathered for him. The Queen's voice rang out, far too young. Another woman hiding a frightened little girl behind her skirts. This one doesn't even dare to look me in the eye. A burly, fierce-looking woman glared at him with fiery eyes. The Queen commented immediately. Has she come here to fight? A child sat dazed on the floor. Again, too young, utterly unsuitable. He even saw a dog and a wooden doll on the list. The Queen clasped her head in despair and, exasperated, admonished him. This is the occasion to choose a princess for the prince. Do not expect them to be like the women you usually socialize. A future princess must be wise, kind, healthy, and from a respectable family. Suddenly another voice rang out. The elf delegation requests an audience. Sigran stepped forward and bowed gracefully. I am Sigran of the Mistletoe clan. I send greetings to the beautiful Queen Margarita. The Queen smiled warmly, completely unaware of the danger. It has been a long time since elves visited the kingdom. I am quite surprised. Sigran straightened and addressed the Queen directly. I understand your majesty is looking for a woman to become the prince's consort. Is that correct? The Queen replied. You're correct. Sigran, lips forming a confident, clear smile. I am a high elf. In human terms, I am equivalent to a noble from a lineage of great renown. Adrien glared at her, fury simmering beneath his sweat. He thought, what on earth is she planning? Sigran continued her flawless introduction, surrounded by a radiant aura. And by coincidence, my age is not far off from your highnesses. A miniature Adrien screamed madly inside, yelling, lies, we're nearly 1,000 years apart. How can she lie so brazenly without blinking? She added, I've heard that an elf with eternal beauty is an ideal mate for a human. Ah, and there are those who always accompany and follow me. In human terms, they're like an order of knights. Actually, from the very first moment I saw your highness, I felt my fate bound to yours. Adrien's face drained of blood, his pupils contracting in absolute horror. He knew the terrifying truth about her race and thought, elves never lie about fate and bonds. Does she mean everything she just said was sincere? The main hall suddenly buzzed with excitement. The Queen touched her cheek in astonishment and whispered, Oh my heavens! The nobles murmured, Come to think of it, I've heard that elves value fate highly. Are we about to form a marriage alliance with the elves? Good heavens! Adrien realized he had to stop this madness immediately. He stepped forward and seized her wrist boldly. He dragged her out of the great hall, his brow furrowed in anger. We need to talk. A noble shouted from behind them. How rude. Adrien pulled Sigran into an empty chamber and slammed the heavy wooden door shut. He released her and turned, his cold blue eyes filled with accusation. Sigran, speak. What is your true purpose? Sigran rubbed her cheek and smiled with feigned innocence. She answered, I came only to strengthen the friendship between my clan and the kingdom. You know, Adrien's expression darkened further. He refused to play her game. I'll ask again. The elder of the elf clan, Sigran. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise when he peeled away her disguise. He revealed an executioner, the one who had handled his family's dirty work for centuries. Sort of the Mistletoe clan. Are you here to investigate or to carry out execution? Sigran's innocent smile vanished, replaced by a menacing smirk. She asked, "Interesting. How do you know of me?" Adrien stood firm, silent and resolute. He analyzed the terrible threat before him. Perhaps a monster whose strength his current power couldn't even comprehend. That she sensed fate from him meant her rank was high enough to glimpse another past engraved in his soul. Sigran stepped closer, shadows writhing around her like venomous snakes. She taunted him. "You know I am an executioner, yet you don't realize how foolish silence before an executioner is?" Adrien did not flinch. A confident smile cut through the stifling darkness. He retorted, "I know perfectly well that boasting and preening before an executioner is no less foolish. Cut out these games, Sigran. Do not meddle with my fate." Adrien quickly mapped out a survival strategy. He decided she was only mildly curious about him for now. If things stayed as they were, the fate of a lowly human would be torn apart by this mad elf. Better to arouse greater interest. I must become a delicacy that requires time to mature and savor. Something too precious to taste and discard. Sigran leaned in, her eyes wide with genuine interest. She asked, "Who are you really?" Adrien put on a facade and replied, "For now, I am just a pitiful prince discarded by my own father." She pressed, "Then who are you truly?" He said, "Who knows? If you're curious, wait and see." She stared at him intently. I could sense there was something strange. I kept wondering why I was sent on such a trivial mission. It made no sense or meaning at all. But now I know why I was sent here. It was because of you. Adrien looked at that manic delight with utter revulsion. His face twisted in disgust. Whether 400 years ago or now, she was still a terrifying woman. After reaching a dangerous agreement, the two stepped out of the room. They strode side by side down the red carpet of the main hall. Adrien gripped Sigran's hand tightly, putting on a performance before the stunned crowd. The nobles gaped as they passed. Adrien stopped before the queen's throne, his face wearing a fake, alluring smile. He declared, "I have an announcement. I will be betrothed to Sigran." Sigran clung to his arm, resting her head on his shoulder with a happy smile and flushed cheeks. Despite his confident outward show, Adrien was dying inside at the thought of having to call her by such an affectionate name. He must not oppose Sigran's betrothal now, even if only to buy more time. He watched the queen make the decisive move in his delay plan. He said, "Because this is far too important to decide hastily, I intend to take some time to learn more." The queen touched her chin, relieved by the postponement. "You agree?" "Yes, that is best." Adrien analyzed the perspectives of everyone involved. For the queen, this time would be used to calculate the value of the betrothal. For Sigran, this time was for the delicacy that is me to mature. For himself, he would use this time to build enough strength to escape this mad elf. In a lavishly decorated office, the air was thick with extreme anger. Third Prince Julian slammed his fist onto the wooden table, his face contorted with hatred and jealousy as he yelled, "Damn you, bastard. Your only advantage over me is that you were born first." He stood there, chest heaving with bloodlust as he recalled the recent string of humiliations. The ghosts of thorns and roses twisted through his mind. Not long ago, his uncle suddenly appeared and declared support for him. Then he stole the Iron Lion's prize. And now he dares to target an elf clan. I promised I would duel that bastard soon. Killing him would only make things more complicated. So I will cut him down just enough that he can no longer call himself a man. I will crush you into the mud. The day of the duel arrived beneath a clear blue sky at the royal palace courtyard. Knights gathered in great numbers, forming an excited audience. The referee stood proud in silver armor and a red cloak, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "This duel is officially sanctioned by the commander of the Royal Knights and the honorable titleholder Silver Lion. I, Chamhill Stuttgart, witness and confirm this duel. Therefore no one may dispute the result. Your Highnesses, raise your swords." Facing a determined Julian, the first prince merely covered his mouth and let out a long, bored yawn. He looked wholly unimpressed by the spectacle, thinking, "It's just a sword stroke. Why so much talk?" Julian sneered with arrogant confidence. "I've arranged a great deal for my elder brother. I even brought a crowd. Do you like that?" Adrien stared at him with hollow eyes, standing so relaxed it bordered on insult. Try not to disappoint the audience. I've been thinking about this for some time. You talk too much. Provoked by the blatant disrespect, faint blue sparks began to crackle fiercely around his body. I hope you can keep that tone after this duel is over. However, Adrien's blue eyes suddenly flared with a chilling, terrifying light. A massive blue aura erupted from the blade, turning the surrounding air into a mana vortex. He swung his sword with devastating force. I plan to toy with you a bit, but I'm rather busy. Wham! A single strike sent the third prince flying backward like a broken puppet. Julian slammed hard into the ground, coughing up blood. The entire arena fell into stunned silence. Even the referee's eyes widened in disbelief as he thought, is that really the first prince I once knew? The referee stepped forward, breaking the stillness. The victor is His Highness the First Prince. I declare that His Highness the Third Prince cannot continue. The crowd erupted into frantic whispers. Impossible. Adrien cast a look of contempt over his shoulder at the nobles who were whispering. These self-style nobles have gathered to watch a child's fight. Rumors then spread as the nobles murmured. Did Prince Julian really lose? He's the kingdom's promising second heir. How could he lose to the first prince, who's only trained for a few months? Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Julian lay heavily bandaged, jolting awake and howling in pain and rage. You worthless piece of trash. I'll make you pay forever. A knight stepped forward and said. As soon as the match ended, the first prince departed the capital with Count Balerhard. A shocked face asked, Departed? To where? The knight hesitated. Sir, he said he would head north to Balerhard's domain. Under a bleak, snow-filled sky, the royal carriage, escorted by heavily armored knights, crossed the frozen fields. Adrien sat comfortably, wearing a triumphant smile. Count Balerhard observed him and dryly remarked, You've certainly learned to ride convincingly. Adrien beamed with confidence. Once you get it, it comes quickly, doesn't it? The count sighed, regretting his compliment. I should not have said that. You really need to learn some humility. But why are you in such a hurry? The festivities are over. Wouldn't it be better to rest for a few days? Adrien's smile faded. There is no place for me in the capital. In a kingdom that cannot even recognize its own master and grovels before the empire's dogs. I have no intention of begging pitifully for them to take my side. The count considered this, riding beside the carriage. Do you think you'd suit soldiers and knights more than nobles? They aren't as sharp with numbers as the nobility, but they are far more conservative, and I think winning their hearts might be easier. Adrien pictured rallying with mud-smeared soldiers and returned the confident smile. Wallowing in the mud together builds comradeship. What is there to worry about? However, the count still voiced his concern. I cannot shake the feeling that you are moving too hastily. Adrien's thoughts darkened as the horrifying image of Sigran holding a tiny, helpless version of him surfaced. He thought to himself, if I hesitate, I will indeed end up marrying that madwoman. Even in the past, everyone she set her sights on met ruin. I must become stronger before then. In a peaceful capital, that is a distant dream, so I must leave. I will accelerate my growth and temper my sword elsewhere, a place where men are tested more than anywhere else. The place I belong is the battlefield. The expedition reached the majestic, snow-capped peaks. The count glanced at the young man and said, Those are the Blade Mountains, the border our family has guarded all our lives. Adrien trembled violently, hugging himself. I'm about to freeze to death. The count offered a simple solution. If you can't bear it, why not return to the carriage? Adrien stubbornly refused. No, I'll have to get used to this cold. The old teacher peered out comfortably. I feel like I'm just in the way. This old man is taking up an entire carriage. The protagonist replied. Really? What did you come here to do? The old man laughed heartily. If not now, when will I ever have the chance to see the harsh north for myself? Besides, the book I'm writing this time will surely be useful to your highness. Adrien turned away, muttering under his breath. That old man is such a nuisance. He glanced at the loyal knight riding beside him. Arwin, are you all right? The wind ahead will cut to the bone. Adrien smiled brightly. I'm fine. The protagonist added. If it gets too hard, I can always switch positions. Her body trembled, but she said seriously to the protagonist. As a knight, how could I put my own comfort first? Adrien smiled, relieved. At least one of them was still full of zeal. What a relief. Meanwhile, the others were uncomfortable and complained. dragged along by the royal order. If Karl were here, he would have put them in line properly. A while earlier, the king had said to the protagonist, "The royal knights are not your private company of knights. Don't you also keep many knights directly under your command? Though I wonder whether you ever really regard them as knights." Adrien scowled, cursing the king's rigidity. That narrow-minded old man. That's why Karl couldn't come north with us. Even though I acted like an executioner, he's still one of mine. The king's attitude feels a bit excessive. Clearly something is going on behind the scenes. Suddenly, the weather turned harsh. The snow became a raging blizzard in an instant. The wind howled fiercely. Count Balerhard shouted commands over the roar of the storm. "We need to speed up our pace. We'll be trapped by the blizzard and unable to move." The snow turned into a violent blizzard. In moments, the forced march became so brutal we might even lose the carriage. The count glanced back and yelled, "Take only the horses and move on foot. If we don't hurry." Adrien thought. A shout back by Mana. Cutting through the gale, he called loudly, "Adilia." He reached out his hand to gesture for her to come out. She offered her hand, her face flushed. "Your Highness, thank you." As the chaos rose, Arwin stepped forward to check on him. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Adrien answered firmly, "I'm fine." The strong wind nearly blew the night away. The knights shouted to maintain order. "Watch out. You'll crash." "Wait, the wind's too strong." Seeing this, the protagonist strode over angrily. "Arwin, take care of Adilia." Arwin responded immediately. "Yes, Your Highness." Seeing the soldiers struggling with heavy gear, Adrien yelled in anger, "You idiots, drop your shields. Of course you'll be knocked down carrying giant shields like that. Draw your swords and discard anything cumbersome. We can come back for it later. You big guy, lead the way." Everyone fallen behind him. The battle-hardened northern knights watched this display of leadership with deep respect. One remarked, "It seems we won't need to intervene. I intended to let him undergo the initiation, then assist." "Does Your Highness really have true combat experience?" The march continued to test human limits. Each step in that blizzard felt like carrying 1,000 weights. A soldier collapsed into the deep snow. The knights panicked. "Your Highness, a soldier has fallen behind." Adrien wasted no time, pushed aside, and thundered through the ranks. He hoisted the unconscious soldier onto his shoulders. "What are you doing?" "Keep marching." The knights fell silent in astonishment. Gasping under the assault of cold, Adrien cursed the sky. "Damn blizzard. If you're going to stop, then stop now." As if answering his iron will, the storm suddenly and miraculously dispersed. The sky cleared as if it had all been a lie. Before them stood a massive, inspiring fortress carved into the heart of the mountain. Count Balerhard stepped forward and struck his fist to his chest in a proud, resonant gesture. "As the lawful ruler of Balerhard and commander of the kingdom's 3rd Legion, I welcome the visit of the first prince." Adrien looked up, a radiant, confident smile spreading across his face. The count smiled back, his scarred face softening with genuine warmth. "I sincerely welcome you to the Eastern Hold." Cold winds howled across the desolate peaks of the Blade Mountains, whipping around the fortress's massive stone walls at the kingdom's northernmost edge. This is the Eastern Hold, a harsh, unforgiving stronghold built to stop the waves of monsters spilling from the treacherous peaks. For ordinary soldiers, it is a living nightmare. They gritted their teeth, breath steaming in the freezing air as one complained, "It's bitter, brutal, dangerous, and the survival rate is awful. This is a place I never want to set foot in again." By contrast, those born and raised in Balerhard regard defending this gigantic gate as a lifelong pride. The heavy iron gate groaned open, admitting the pale winter sunlight. Standing solemnly in the courtyard was a young man with sharp features and dark blue hair, clad in black armor lined with white fur. He struck his hand to his chest with disciplined vigor before Count Bale Valhard and declared, "Vincent Balerhard, from this day, I conclude my duties as acting commander and return to lead the Rangers. It's a relief to have you back safe, father." The count placed a warm hand on his shoulder, a rare smile easing his weathered face. "You did well." Vincent stood nearby as Adrien watched the exchange with amusement, leaning in with a mischievous smile and cut in, "What's this, sir? You have a son?" The count replied, "Do you think I'd reach this age without having at least one child?" The protagonist pointed and added, "Now that I look closely, you two do look rather alike, especially that stubborn mouth." The count then formally introduced, Vincent, this is His Highness, First Prince Adrien. Vincent stepped forward, his stern, impassive face bowing respectfully. Ranger Commander Bale Valhard, Vincent of House Bale, greets Your Highness, First Prince. Adrien beamed, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. However, beneath his polite exterior, Vincent clenched his teeth and stared at the ground, fury boiling in his mind. The Eastern Hold is a fortress for true warriors, those who risk their lives for a noble cause. This is not a place for some spoiled wreck expelled from the capital to waste time. Why did Father bring this person here? Then Vincent confronted his father. Father, exactly what is going on? Just as you've heard, I've decided to become his patron, and Adrien will stay in Balarhar for the time being. Hearing that, his tone turned harsher. Didn't even the king abandon him? Isn't he that rogue you once harshly reprimanded for lack of talent? The count turned his back and simply said, People can change. I only ask one thing of you, Vincent. Watch him without prejudice. In the dim strategy room, Count Bale Valhard asked, How is the campaign against the monster tribes progressing? Vincent reported, We have steadily reduced their numbers, but many areas are still uncleared. Now that you are here, Father, we will act with seriousness. Then the remaining force is the Rangers. The problem is the Orcs. A group of fewer than 20 Orcs has settled near the mountain entrance. With numbers like that, it's hard to deal with them using only the Rangers' bows. Adrien suddenly lunged forward, held it up into the light with a dangerous smile, and declared, I'll handle this. A knight opposite said, Now, Your Highness, the Blade Mountain tribes are not like ordinary Orcs. Vincent added, If something goes wrong, it could disrupt the Rangers' operations. He glanced over and called the Count father. The Count fell silent for a moment, observing Adrien's unwavering confidence. Then he asked Vincent about the Orc strength. Vincent, what are the official numbers and strength of the Orcs? Vincent answered, So far confirmed up to 20. No Orc warriors or mages observed, but their presence cannot be ruled out. The Count looked back at Adrien with a suggestive, challenging smile. Do you have confidence? The remark prompted Vincent to jump in at once. Father, that entrance is one of the Rangers' main routes. If we make a mistake and it turns into a prolonged battle, future campaigns will become twice as difficult. And if anything happens to him, Balarhard's reputation will be affected. The protagonist looked at him and thought, He's been drilled into this fellow thoroughly. The Count nonchalantly replied, Enough, do not worry. Adrien, what do you need? Adrien listed immediately. First, have 3 of the guides upgrade the gear for my men. If you have crossbows, lend us some. The Count nodded in agreement. That is not difficult. I will arrange it. The knights looked at one another, daring not to say anything. After a moment, the protagonist's voice rang out. We will move. The assigned escort formed up. Knight Hand looked utterly confused. Excuse me, what do you mean? Adrien explained cheerfully. We have been tasked to subdue an Orc tribe, about 20 enemies, which may or may not include warriors or mages. He replied in astonishment. Your Highness, the 3rd Legion is here, so why must we? Our mission is to escort you. Adrien answered smoothly. Then perfect. You still have to follow me to protect me anyway. The 3rd Legion's report will arrive today. Retrieve the equipment and report back to me. Then the protagonist thought, whether I like it or not, these are the soldiers assigned to me. I should use them efficiently. They were unreliable in the blizzard. But he squinted, his blue irises flashing as he activated his special power. Status windows appeared above the knights. Han's deck trait, Swordsmanship C, Drill Regularity, Siege Defense, Infantry Battle Formation. He assessed silently. Yet they are elites chosen by the crown. Looking at the knight named Josep, the status window revealed interrogation and disguise skills. Adrien narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Perhaps a suspicious man has infiltrated here. Outside, Adrien approached with Vincent. Adrien asked in surprise, You are the guide? Vincent frowned a warning. Your Highness may not realize this, but if this fails, the consequences will be far greater than you think. Adrien smiled warmly. I assure you, we will not fail. Vincent snapped. You are taking this far too lightly. Immediately, the air between them grew tense. Adrien maintained his smile and analyzed Vincent's strength. Couldn't view the status window, at least not for one 3rd-rank knight. He realized those accompanying Vincent were actually knights disguised as rangers and smiled inwardly at this hidden safety net. Before departing, he ordered Adilia to stay. Adilia, Don't worry. I will not take you. He knew the violent nature of her latent ability and thought it would be troublesome if her trait awakened accidentally. She replied to him, I'm sorry, Your Highness. The expedition pushed deep into the frozen wilds. Adrien marched at the front, leading the formation through frost-covered trees. Vincent kept muttering to everyone, conserve your stamina while walking. If stamina drops, your limbs will stiffen and fighting will be affected. Especially in snow and ice like the Blade Mountain Range. Watch your footing. The protagonist thought inwardly. This fellow lectures worse than my father. Suddenly, a rustling shattered the silence as a white rabbit shot across the snowy path. Vincent exhaled in relief, but his instincts flared. He raised his brass spyglass, swept it across the dense trees ahead, and saw a horrifying scene. A large group of orcs with glowing red eyes were gnawing on a blood-soaked corpse. Vincent urgently reported to Adrien. There's a group of orcs up ahead. What shall we do? Adrien didn't hesitate. He raised his gouged hand and ordered coldly, load. Behind him, Hand and the other knights immediately hefted their heavy crossbows. Arwin drew her sword with focused determination. The clatter of metal echoed through the quiet forest, alerting the orcs to the intrusion. Adrien stepped forward, cold wind whipping his golden hair. His blue eyes burned with a terrifying hunting light and a gleeful smile. He whispered to the monsters, "Goodbye, long time no see." Without looking back, he lowered his hand and commanded, "Fire!" The crossbow bolts tore through the frigid air and struck the orcs with brutal force. Blood splattered onto the snow as the creatures howled in pain and fury. The surviving orcs, armed with crude weapons, charged straight at the formation. Adrien did not retreat. Instead, he drew his long sword and lunged forward. Heavy footsteps thundered on the ground. A roar rang out, full of killing intent and the tang of blood. This is what I've missed, what I remembered, what I have longed for. Wonderful. The battlefield atmosphere confronted the monster's vanguard head-on. Arwin shouted desperately, worried for the prince's safety. Adrien. Adrien completely ignored her. "Do not come here." He stood firm on the snow, raising his sword into a perfect defensive stance. Adrien's smile deepened, skirting the edge of madness as he breathed in this chaotic air and warned with a chilling grin. "Step wrong, and you'll be swept up in it." As the battle erupted, the blue light in Adrien's eyes was suddenly obscured by a violent crimson. The white snowy scene blurred, replaced by a deep memory from over 400 years ago. It was the tale of a lone man burning with hatred for the orcs. A man who fought without end. A lamenting song of a father exhausted by endless war. A fleeting melody of an extraordinary, avenging warrior. That ancient blood-red aura exploded from Adrien's body, spiraling around him like a hellfire. The red energy enveloped his blade, making it vibrate with deadly force. Ancient words echoed in his mind. "I pile up blue corpses and climb the mountain. And beneath lies a spreading lake of red." He looked down at the slaughter with a terrifyingly serene smile. The system window confirmed the presence of the ancient power, singing a poem of vengeance. Cut to elsewhere. In a dim room, long shadows fell across the ornate wall. A heavy leather pouch of coins thudded onto a mahogany table. An orange-haired knight anxiously looked at the figure seated in a crimson velvet armchair. "They say people die all the time at Winter Castle," he muttered in a fearful voice. The older man in the chair leaned back, a sly, haughty smile stretching across his face. "Don't worry, there will be no war. What can that worthless prince do over there? He'll probably just hide in the castle and try to steal credit. The one that matters is not that brat, but Bale Valhard. Keep an eye on Winter Castle and report anything suspicious to me. Can you do that?" The orange-haired knight grabbed the pouch, greed and confidence replacing his earlier fear. "I will do my utmost, my count." The warmth of the noble's study shattered, replaced by the cold, brutal reality of the snowy battlefield. The air thickened with the stench of blood and the ear-splitting roars of monsters. The orange-haired knight stood in the snow, his breath forming frantic clouds, his face drained with horror as he stared at the giant blue beast before him. He thought, "That's what I heard, but this can't be. It's nothing like what the old man described." Behind, Arwin's dark hair streamed in the cold wind. "First rank, hold formation, and advance." A giant orc swung a crude wooden club and smashed into the knight's line. Bang! The orange-haired knight gasped, staggered back in terror, sweat pouring, his mind in chaos. Damn it, what should I do? Arwin's voice cut through the chaos again. Second rank attack. Driven by pure survival instinct, he squeezed his eyes shut and lunged forward, thrusting his spear with all his strength into the beast's thick hide. But relief instantly turned to despair as the giant orc was completely unfazed, looking down at him with glowing red eyes. He realized the horrific truth. His attacks had no effect. I'm surely dead. The orc raised its weapon, ready to crush the trembling man. Suddenly, a brilliant blue lightning flashed through the snowy forest. Arwin leapt into the fray, her sword crackling with fierce blue mana. She sliced a sharp, clean stroke across the orc's neck. Blood sprayed, and the giant toppled backward into the snow. The orange-haired knight collapsed, his weapon falling from his hand as he curled up. Arwin stood above him, her cold blue eyes merciless. This is a battlefield. Don't you dare drop your weapon. The ground began to tremble rhythmically. From the trees, a fearsome orc warrior emerged in armor and a horned helmet. Arwin tightened her grip on the hilt, her expression grave. All units, prepare to fight. She quickly assessed the overwhelming enemy force. There are quite many of them. It will be difficult to handle them all with our current numbers. Before despair could fully set in, a deep crimson energy beam tore through the battlefield. Arwin's eyes widened in shock as a red beam pierced through a charging orc, cutting it perfectly in half. Blood splattered across the white snow. It was Adrien. His blonde hair caught the dim light, his silver armor gleaming beneath the blood-red aura erupting from his body. He moved like a god of death, his sword a streak of deep red as he effortlessly slaughtered the monsters around him. She saw him and blurted out, "Your Highness." But his gaze was vacant now. He did not answer her. The protagonist lunged forward, ignoring her frantic calls. No matter how many he killed, it was never enough. Searching for the enemy's blood, he wandered through the barren lands dominated by orcs. The mana in his heart had long been exhausted, yet he did not stop, drinking the orcs' blood and chewing their flesh. With each step, the man grew older and weak. Only the demon's sword in his hand aided him, burning his remaining life force to fulfill his final vow. It was a requiem for his wife and daughter, who had been killed without leaving so much as a scrap of flesh. A torn family portrait lay forgotten among the ruins. And finally, when he faced the enemy of his life, he withered away. The lone white-haired avenger in the snow confronted a colossal orc chieftain like a giant, one eye of darkness that swallowed the ground. The man smiled a broken, weary smile, but his eyes flashed with an undying red flame of hatred. He charged with everything he had left, yet the man did not give up until the very end. Despite his bravery, he was struck down, his body shattered in a snowdrift. No miracle came. His life faded, a forgotten tragedy, untold, unknown to anyone. Only the demon's sword, Adrien's past life's weapon, remained stuck deep in the snow, witnessing it all. Back in the present, the red aura around Adrien flared with fierce pain and absolute resolve. He thought, I will be the only one to remember all. He stood tall among the slain orcs, his voice echoing. Knights, deal with the orc warriors. The rest of you hold the orcs back. He tightened his grip on his sword. I remember now, the Song of Vengeance is an unfinished song. I must finish this song. Adrien hurled himself back into the pack of monsters, a blood-soaked cyclone of retribution. He weaved through the giant beasts, beheading and dismembering them with terrifying grace. Blood arced into crescents, turning the battlefield into a horrific tableau. A gilded system window appeared amid the carnage. A new stanza had been added to the poem of vengeance. Adrien's voice rang mysteriously as he read the newly forged words. Pile up the blue corpses to form a mountain, and beneath it a deep red swamp. And here, I stand to honor your soul. The system window sounded again. The poem of vengeance had become a requiem. Adrien's eyes returned to their sharp, normal blue. The battle was over. The remaining knights stood victorious in the snow. Vincent stepped forward, holding a tattered red flag stained with blood. He snapped the wooden pole. By breaking the orc standard, the orcs have been defeated. Vincent turned to the soldiers with a triumphant smile. I declare victory. This is our victory. The troops cheered. Adrien looked at them, thinking silently. Is this fellow Vincent Bale Valhard? The heir of a house who had devoted his life to fighting monsters, shared the same name as the pitiable avenger who once fell to end the orc's existence. A fleeting image of the old man who died in the snow passed through Adrien's mind. The man had spoken with his sword before he died. In the next life, let's meet again. Adrien thought to himself, how ironic. Vincent's face showed clear displeasure as he silently sulked. Adrien glanced over his shoulder and asked, what is it? Vincent stepped forward, offering the tattered flag to the prince. He said, please accept this. Adrien tilted his head, completely puzzled by the gesture. Vincent explained in a formal tone. In the 3rd Legion, the bravest soldier receives the enemy's flag. It is the spoil of a glorious and lasting victory. Furthermore, this flag belongs to your highness. From behind, Arwin stepped forward respectfully. Your highness, I wish to pay my respects for your brave deeds in today's battle. Suddenly, the entire armored company bowed. They roared in unison, their voices echoing across the white snow. We honor your highness' brave battle. The corner of Adrien's mouth curled into a triumphant, satisfied smile. Another voice interjected. Say it louder, so everyone can hear. He raised a red flag high into the cold air and shouted at the top of his lungs. We have won. The knights were swept up by his infectious energy. They raised their fists and cheered wildly. We have won. The sky burned as a backdrop to Adrien as he stood in a victorious pose. The troops bellowed. We honor your highness. Welcome to Winter Castle, your highness. Adrien basked in the admiration, his inner self swelling with ego. He thought, victory, the cheers, glory. I hold it all in my hands. Then, breaking the solemn atmosphere completely, he hugged the flag like a prized toy and shouted gleefully, this flag is mine. Vincent stood behind, clearly bored by the prince's antics. Adrien continued his childish boasting. Yes, I am the one. He suddenly stopped, a shadow falling over his face as he heard a soft voice. One. He turned and asked, Vincent looked at him with a slightly petty smile. I mean the orc army's flags. I have 16 of them. Adrien froze, mouth agape in silence. The knights behind broke in a nervous sweat. One whispered, the captain is really childish. Adrien's shock quickly turned to anger. He flailed the flag wildly in front of Vincent and shouted, who cares? This flag is mine. Vincent stepped back, stunned by the sudden outburst. He ground his teeth, a vein standing out on his forehead, and thought, I still dislike him. After a while, a massive campfire blazed, sending thick black smoke into the dusk sky. The soldiers stood silent before the pyre. Adrien and Arwin watched the flames. Vincent observed quietly. Casualties aren't too high for a battle against an elite orc fighting unit. Adrien replied coldly. Is that so? Arwin bowed her head, a trace of sorrow. Still, it's regrettable. Vincent affirmed without taking his eyes off the fire. Victory is the mourning and gratitude large enough for those who fell. We comfort the departed souls with the blood of the orcs. Adrien looked at the young ranger commander, a familiar feeling washing over him. He thought, he shares the same name and manner of speaking. Could he really be reincarnated? Adrien broke the silence. So, all members of this 3rd Legion unit are joining us? Vincent lied without blinking. A ranger detachment happened to pass by and joined us. The protagonist found the transparent lie unamusing. What an astonishing coincidence. Vincent forced a strained smile, sweating. Yes, a coincidence. He didn't believe it and had secretly prepared. Vincent quickly steered the conversation back to tactical matters. By the way, it's strange the orc fighting unit came this far down the mountain. It's also odd the rangers didn't detect their movement. We should return quickly. The towering spires of Winter Castle bathe in the golden light of the setting sun as the victorious expedition marched through the great stone gate. The Count waited to greet them. Well done. Congratulations on returning safely. Adrien immediately puffed out his chest, waving the tattered red cloth. This enemy flag is mine. He brandished it vigorously. The knights around him laughed and applauded. Wonderful. Your Highness, did you capture the enemy flag on your first battle? A short distance away, Arwin and 2 other knights watched with hollow eyes. One knight sighed. The prince is showing it off again. Another added, I think he's done that 11 times already. Arwin remained completely silent. Adrien continued to boast. Yes, I am the one. Suddenly, the Count interrupted, pulling Vincent aside to ask about the mountain irregularities. Vincent reported, explaining that the orc unit appeared unusually early. Perhaps they found a large prey, or something happened deep in the mountain. The Count added, Neither sounds good for us. I wanted everyone to rest, but this is important. Follow me. As Vincent left, he paused and glanced back over his shoulder. Your Highness, thank you for your efforts. Adrien watched puzzled and asked, He seems odd, doesn't he? Arwin smiled and explained. With his rough manner, he seems embarrassed by his sudden change in attitude. Before Adrien could ponder further, a breathless voice rang out. Your Highness. Adilia ran up to him with a face full of relief. You have returned safely. She stopped in front of him, panting, her large green eyes trembling with worry. I was so worried. You might be injured or lost. Adrien's expression softened into a gentle smile. It's only... She looked up hopefully. Yes. Adrien's gentle smile immediately turned into a smug grin as he shoved the torn flag into her face and asked, Do you know what this is? Night fell, darkness covering the quiet room. Vincent spoke. We will form a ranger detachment to investigate and deploy to the mountain area in the next few days. We don't know what variables we'll encounter there. Therefore, only elite personnel capable of specialized mountain reconnaissance will be sent, which means you don't need to participate. Adrien slumped in the velvet armchair, pouting like a child. I don't really understand what you're saying. Why did you come all the way here to report the meeting's outcome? Vincent avoided his gaze, clearly uncomfortable, replying that the commander had ordered. Adrien looked at him and realized the intent behind it. It seemed Uncle wanted us to become friends, and it wasn't that difficult. Adrien sighed in response. Fine, you may go. Rest well. Vincent bowed and left. The heavy wooden door closed. Adrien exhaled wearily. He sat alone in the dim light, the red flag lying quietly on the polished wooden table. I was too absorbed in today's battle. For the first time, I recited an ancient epic without missing a stanza. This will probably continue. The epics I remember, after all, are not truly mine. The things I possess are at the same time not truly mine. I must make them entirely my own, just as the poem of vengeance has now become a requiem. Suddenly, a sharp sound shattered the silence. Adrien whipped his head toward the window. Another sound followed. He looked toward the panes lit only by moonlight and murmured, A bird. But when Adrien focused his gaze, he held his breath and realized, Wait, not that. The creature turned its head. Its eyes were blazing purple voids. A terrifying, chaotic aura of black-purple energy radiated from its small body. Adrien stared at this ominous sign, his blood seeming to freeze. He realized the horrifying truth. This was not an ordinary bird. Looking at the creature, Adrien thought to himself, that strange bird was clearly sent here by someone. Then, from inside the bird, a voice rang out. Does your Highness like the gift I sent? Hearing that familiar voice, Adrien finally realized. Indeed it was so. But a gift? He asked in wonder. Could the reason the orcs appear at the mountain base be? Sigran replied. I only hoped your Highness would face a more ordinary foe. Please accept this token of my goodwill with pleasure. Adrien frowned, thinking dozens of hunters died because of that. And she still brazenly prattles on? The Fae are all a sick bunch who enjoy peeking. She must have been delighted to watch us slaughter each other with the orc fighting you. She continued to praise. A vengeance song aimed at the entire orc race? I saw it and was truly impressed. Adrien judged again. This of hers is the so-called kindness those peoples boast about later. Thinking that, he replied, Stop the nonsense. If you have something to say, say it. This made Sigran a bit disappointed. She sighed. Your Highness, you are so cold. The bird circled his head as her voice continued. But unrequited love is inherently arduous. What can one do? I only long for the day your Highness opens your heart to me. Then the bird perched on his shoulder and continued. Deep within that mountain range is something your Highness needs. An extremely ancient being sleeps within those mountains. If turned into a song, I guarantee it would be a masterpiece. This stirred him slightly. A masterpiece? Seeing him growing interested, she changed her tone. Oh my. Sadly, time for this little darling is running out. So, until next time, your Highness. No sooner had she finished speaking than the bird, like a real bomb, exploded before him. The room descended into chaos. Adrien gritted his teeth in anger, helpless, irritating me until the very last moment. What Sigran wanted from me was clear, to compose a new war song, constantly both audience and voyeuristic reveler. For they're a race that can never be the protagonist of a song. They weave other songs with their own melodies and take pleasure in the sword dance. Her feeding me information is surely to obtain a deeper song through me. Still, this time I'll play along with her and see. The next day, right after he told Vincent this, the latter asked, "You mean inside that mountain range? Although hunters come and go from that mountain like market-goers, that's only the outskirts. Of those who ventured deep inside, not a single one returned alive." This startled him. Really, not a single one? Vincent nodded in confirmation. Yes, not a single one. Our mission is to stop the monsters spilling down from the mountain, not to probe its interior. At that, Adrien suddenly had an idea. So no one knows what's inside there? In the past, because knights scoured the world seeking transcendent realms, all the mysteries and wonders of this world were thoroughly stripped bare. Yet here remains a place called the Forbidden Region. He stared at the mountain ahead, assessing. Indeed, in many respects, coming to Balerhard was the right decision. Suddenly Vincent's voice rang out. "I say this merely as a warning. Your Highness, absolutely do not intend to enter deep within that mountain range." Understanding his meaning, he waved his hand. "All right, I won't go in, so don't worry." As he walked, he hummed a few lines, thinking, at least for now, another dull day passed here. The guards yawned short, bored yawns. With nothing to do, he took out his sword and began to clean it. While polishing, he thought, deep inside the mountain, what kind of being could be there? Though he wanted to rush there immediately, now is not the time. I need more battles and more victories. Well, Banage is always a hot spot for skirmishes, so soon it will. Just then, a trumpet blast echoed throughout the city, startling the soldiers. "Damn, the next assault is already upon us?" The other shouted. "All to the wall now. Summon all forces outside the city inside. Bring more people here, quickly." He followed their steps to eavesdrop and see what was happening. Vale's voice then ordered the soldiers, "All archers, prepare your positions." He and Arwin anxiously ran over calling, "Uncle." Vale turned and replied, "You're here." Then he pointed ahead. "Over there." At that moment, a few tiny figures appeared on the opposite mountain, fleeing toward the fortress. After watching for a while, he realized the Rangers are retreating. What on earth is that? A soldier urgently shouted, "Run, you brats! Run faster! Wolf cavalry are on their tail." It turned out the soldiers were fleeing because they were being chased by orcs. Voices from the wall continued, "Hold on a little longer. They're still out of arrow range." The Rangers ran, cursing angrily. "Damn those fucking orcs!" Another shouted, "Do they never tire?" Watching from above, he sensed something odd. Vale beside him added, "Yes, they're clearly toying with their prey." The wolf cavalry should have caught up at that distance. Seeing the fortress ahead, one soldier, exhausted, halted. "If this continues, we'll all be wiped out." Then he resolutely turned back. "I'll stand by time." Alone he faced the monsters, raising his sword. "Come at me. I am a great ranger of Balerhard." Seeing this, the others panicked and yelled, "No, don't stop. Run a little further, you bastards." But it was too late. The soldier was immediately hurled at by a wolf and killed in one strike. Witnessing this, the other soldiers cried out in alarm. "Captain!" They drew their weapons and turned to fight, but their fate was little different from the captain's. Two soldiers were swiftly dispatched in a single blow. Watching from the wall, Vale sighed helplessly. Damn. Except for the standing guard force, the other soldiers could withdraw from the ramparts. He then turned to him and said, "Aren't you going to ask why I didn't save them?" "Adrien," he replied, "didn't you deliberately bring me here just to show me that sight?" The man nodded. "Yes, it's a trap. If we sally out, we'd be swallowed by them. In a fight with monsters, there's no such thing as fairness." Vincent stepped up from behind to add to his father's words. "They don't care about their own losses. Attrition warfare is what they want. Winter has just begun. We cannot act recklessly." Then suddenly a soldier shouted, "The wolf cavalry are approaching." What met everyone's eyes were three wolf-mounted riders charging straight at the fortress without fear. One wolf still bore a soldier in its jaws, the man grievously wounded. When they reached a certain distance, it dropped the soldier. Watching from above, a soldier cried out in shock when he saw the man still moving. "He's alive." Then one after another, the bodies of warriors were laid out beneath the gate. Vale observed from above and assessed. "This winter truly isn't like any other." Vincent shouted anxiously, "How dare they stoop to such tricks?" He watched, thinking, could this be the handiwork of that damned Fae? Below, heavy footsteps trod across the cold snow. An orc radiating a dense, murderous aura stood there, holding a bright red flag. It looked toward those on the gate and gave a strange smile. Watching from above, he now realized something. The atmosphere this time was... The orc stamped its foot hard, roaring challenge after challenge. Vincent startled and blurted, "Are the orcs planning some kind of execution?" He stepped up from behind, placed a hand on his shoulder, and explained, "No, it's not that they're staging an execution. They're issuing a challenge to single combat." He smiled, thinking, an ancient being sleeps deep within that mountain range. Now I know what that is. The orc had been, until now hoarse voices echoed through the air. Fight, or fight gloriously to reclaim the Legion's honor. For the great king, he judged, it made sense, given how loudly the creature was shouting.